Emma Harrison's hands trembled as she clutched her mother's resume, the paper soft from being folded and unfolded too many times. Through the glass window of Massachusetts General Hospital's ICU, she watched her mother's chest rise and fall with mechanical precision, each breath stolen, borrowed, nearly gone. Stage 4 lung cancer, the doctor had said. Weeks, maybe months. The phone call still echoed in her skull. We do not reschedule interviews. No exceptions. Click. Emma pressed her forehead against the cold glass. 22 years old, 3 jobs, $3.47 in her pocket. Her father's voice whispered from 14 years ago, "Be brave, Emma Bear." She straightened, reached for her mother's worn blazer draped across the chair. The choice crystallized with terrible clarity. Watch her mother die, or fight. Emma walked toward the elevator, resume clutched to her chest like armor. Outside, October rain lashed Boston's streets. She had no umbrella, no taxi money. No plan except this. She would walk into that interview herself, one girl against an unforgiving world. She stepped into the rain. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. The bus lurched through Boston's rain-slicked streets, and Emma Harrison pressed her face against the fog-streaked window, watching her reflection blur and dissolve. 22 years old, drowning in a life she'd never chosen. Her mother's blazer hung 3 sizes too large on her shoulders, the fabric still holding the faint scent of hospital antiseptic and something else. Her mother's perfume, the cheap kind from CVS that Maggie Harrison had worn for 20 years because it was all she could afford. Emma had rolled the sleeves 4 times. The hem hit her knees. She looked like a child playing dress-up in her mother's clothes, which she supposed she was. The worn Ferragamo heels on her feet told their own story. 15 years old, resoled 4 times, the leather cracked like spider webs across the toe. Her father had given them to her mother on their last anniversary together, spending 3 months' worth of grocery money on a single gift. Maggie had cried. Emma, 8 years old then, hadn't understood why someone would cry over shoes. Now, at 22, wearing those same shoes with cardboard stuffed inside to cover the holes, she understood everything. Thomas Harrison had died in a construction accident when Emma was 8. That's what they'd told her. That's what she'd believed for 14 years. A good man, a loving father, gone in an instant because safety regulations were expensive and life was cheap. Her mother had been pregnant when it happened, 6 months along with what would have been Emma's little sister. The stress, the shock, the grief. Maggie had miscarried 3 days after the funeral. 2 losses in 1 week. Emma remembered her mother's face in the hospital, empty as a house after foreclosure. After that, Maggie Harrison had worked, and worked, and worked. Janitor at Massachusetts General Hospital, then night shifts at the diner, then weekend cleaning jobs in the financial district office buildings where people like Jonathan Mitchell worked. People who'd never had to choose between heating and eating, never had to water down the milk to make it last, never had to pretend they weren't hungry so their child could have seconds. Emma had been brilliant in school, the kind of brilliant that came with full scholarships and professor recommendations and a future that stretched out bright and impossible. Boston University, accounting major, 3.9 GPA. She'd been 1 semester from graduation when the medical bills started arriving. Cancer doesn't care about your dreams. Cancer doesn't wait for convenient timing. Cancer takes and takes and takes until there's nothing left but the choice. Finish your degree or save your mother's life. Emma had withdrawn from BU on a Tuesday, started working 3 jobs by Friday. Now she rode the bus to the financial district at 9:00 a.m. on a Monday morning, wearing her dead father's gift to her dying mother, carrying a resume that wasn't hers, with $3.47 in her pocket and a heart full of the kind of desperation that made people do impossible things. Through the rain-streaked window, she could see the glass towers rising like monuments to everything she'd never have. Mitchell Innovations occupied 15 floors of the tallest one, a tech company built by a man who'd started with nothing and somehow made it mean something, Jonathan Mitchell. 35 years old, self-made millionaire, orphaned at 15 when his parents died in a building collapse. The newspapers had loved that story. The boy who lost everything and built an empire from grief and grit. They called him brilliant, ruthless, a visionary. Emma called him her last hope. The bus jerked to a stop. Financial district. She stood, legs unsteady, and stepped into the rain. No umbrella. No taxi money. Just one foot in front of the other, her mother's blazer soaking through immediately, mascara already running in black rivers down her cheeks. She didn't care. Vanity was a luxury for people who had something left to lose. Mitchell. Innovations loomed ahead, all glass and steel and cold perfection. Emma clutched the resume tighter, protected in its plastic sleeve, the only thing she'd managed to keep dry. Her father's voice echoed across 14 years. "Be brave, Emma Bear. You're going to change the world." She'd settle for saving one life, her mother's. Emma pushed through the revolving doors and stepped into a world that wasn't built for people like her. The lobby of Mitchell Innovations was a cathedral of wealth. Marble floors stretched endless and white, reflecting the crystal chandeliers that hung like frozen explosions of light overhead. The air smelled of expensive coffee and leather and new money. The kind of money that never worried about next month's rent, or which bill to pay first, or how to make $3 last until Friday. Emma stood in the center of it all, dripping rainwater onto pristine marble, her mother's oversized blazer clinging to her like a second skin of failure. She was aware suddenly and completely of how she looked. A drowned rat in bargain bin clothes, mascara streaking down her cheeks, hair plastered to her skull. Around her, people in tailored suits moved with the easy confidence of those who'd never known hunger, never counted pennies, never made choices between medicine and food. She didn't belong here. She knew it. They knew it. The security guard by the elevator had already noticed her, his hand moving subtly toward his radio. But Emma Harrison hadn't survived 22 years of poverty, hadn't watched her father die and her mother slowly follow, hadn't sacrificed everything she'd ever wanted just to give up now, because some marble floor made her feel small. She straightened her spine, lifted her chin, and walked toward the reception desk like she owned the building. The receptionist looked up. Her name tag read Rachel, and her smile was professionally warm, the kind cultivated specifically to welcome clients who could afford Mitchell Innovations services. The smile flickered when she took in Emma's appearance, a brief crack in the facade before the professional mask returned. "Can I help you?" Rachel's voice carried the slight edge of someone trying to determine if she was dealing with a legitimate visitor or someone who'd wandered in from the street. Emma's throat was dry. Her hands were shaking. But she forced the words out, clear and steady. "I'm here for the 9:30 interview. Margaret Harrison." Rachel's fingers moved across her keyboard, eyes scanning the screen. The smile faded entirely. "I'm sorry, that interview was canceled. Mrs. Harrison called this morning to—" "No." Emma's voice came out sharper than intended. She softened it, tried again. "She didn't. I'm here instead." Rachel's confusion was genuine, not unkind. I don't understand." And there it was, the moment, the choice. Emma could turn around, walk out, preserve what little dignity she had left. Or she could do this, really do this, stand here soaking wet in her dead father's gift to her dying mother and beg for something she had no right to ask for. My mother is in the hospital. The words came out steady, but Emma felt something crack inside her chest. She has cancer. Stage 4. This job, she needs this job, the insurance, the benefits. Please, I can do the interview. I know her qualifications. I helped her prepare the resume. I can... Miss, I'm truly sorry about your mother, but we don't... Please. Emma hated the sound of her own voice, hated the desperation bleeding through. Just 10 minutes. I have her resume, her references. She's qualified. More than qualified. 20 years at Mass General, perfect attendance until 3 weeks ago when the doctor said... Her voice broke. She couldn't say the words again. Couldn't make them real by speaking them. Rachel's professional mask had crumbled entirely, replaced by genuine sympathy. But sympathy didn't change policy. I understand this is difficult, but... The elevator chimed. Emma's heart sank. Security, probably. She'd be escorted out, added to some list, her mother's application permanently flagged. She turned, ready to face humiliation with what little grace she could muster. But it wasn't security. Victoria Ashford stepped from the elevator like a knife in human form, all sharp edges and cold elegance. Director of Human Resources, according to the nameplate on the reception desk directory. Early 30s, impeccably dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Emma's annual rent, hair pulled back so severely it looked painful. Her heels clicked against marble with the precision of a countdown clock. Those eyes, pale blue and assessing, took in Emma's appearance in one sweeping glance. Emma saw herself reflected in Victoria's judgment, pathetic, desperate, inappropriate. Miss? Victoria's voice was ice wrapped in politeness. Emma's hands tightened on the resume. She was so tired. Tired of fighting, tired of losing, tired of watching everyone she loved slip away. But her mother's face swam before her eyes. Maggie Harrison, who'd worked herself to exhaustion for 14 years to give her daughter a chance at something better. Who was dying now in a hospital bed because life was cruel and cancer didn't care about fair. Harrison. Emma Harrison. She met Victoria's gaze directly, refusing to look away. I'm here to interview for my mother. Victoria's expression didn't change, but something flickered behind those cold eyes. Recognition, maybe? Or calculation. That's not how this works. Security. Please. Emma stepped forward, and Victoria's hand moved subtly, a gesture of warning or defense. Emma stopped, holding up her hands in surrender. I know it's irregular. I know I shouldn't be here. But my mother, Margaret Harrison, she's dying. Right now, as we stand here, she's dying in Mass General. This interview was her last hope. The benefits, the insurance, without them, she has nothing. I have nothing. So I'm asking, no, I'm begging. Just give me 10 minutes. Let me show you what she can do, what I can do. Please. Victoria's lips pressed into a thin line. Life is hard for everyone, Miss Harrison. That doesn't make you special. That doesn't give you the right to disrupt. No. Emma's voice came out quiet, but something in it made Victoria pause. You're right. Life being hard doesn't make me special, but being willing to stand here, soaking wet, probably about to be thrown out by security, humiliating myself in front of strangers, all for someone I love, maybe that does. For a moment, Victoria just stared at her. Emma saw something shift in that perfect, controlled face. A crack, perhaps, or a memory. Then Victoria's expression hardened again, arctic and immovable. This is a professional environment, not a charity. The private elevator chimed. Both women turned. The doors slid open with a whisper of expensive machinery, and Jonathan Mitchell stepped into the lobby. Emma had seen his picture in the business magazines her mother sometimes brought home from the offices she cleaned. But photographs didn't capture the physical presence of him, the way he seemed to draw all the light and air in the room toward himself. 35 years old, dressed in a black suit that made Victoria's look cheap by comparison, dark hair slightly disheveled as though he'd been running his hands through it. The exhaustion around his eyes spoke of someone who worked too much, slept too little, carried burdens no amount of money could lift. He was halfway across the lobby, headed for the main entrance, when the sound of raised voices made him pause. Turn. Those eyes, sharp and assessing as a surgeon's scalpel, swept across the scene. Victoria in attack position, Rachel looking distressed, Emma standing there like a refugee from her own life. His gaze settled on Emma's face. She didn't know what he saw there. Desperation, probably. Defeat, masquerading as courage. The particular exhaustion that came from fighting battles you knew you'd already lost. But something in his expression changed. Subtle, barely noticeable, but there. A softening around the eyes, a tension in his jaw. He'd been about to walk out. Emma could see it in his posture, the keys already in his hand. Whatever crisis or meeting or obligation pulled him toward that door, it had been his priority 2 seconds ago. Then he'd seen her. And somehow, impossibly, everything stopped. Victoria. His voice carried across the marble expanse, not loud, but commanding in the way voices become when they're accustomed to being obeyed. What's happening here? Victoria's spine straightened even further, if that was possible. Mr. Mitchell, just an HR matter. Misunderstanding about interview protocol. I'm handling it. Jonathan Mitchell's eyes never left Emma's face. Is that so? Emma felt something in her chest. Not hope, exactly. Hope was too expensive, too dangerous. But something adjacent to it, something that whispered, maybe. The universe had taken everything from her. Maybe, just maybe, it would give something back. Sir! Victoria's voice held a note of warning or perhaps desperation. This young woman doesn't have an appointment. She's not the candidate. She's trying to interview in place of her mother, which obviously violates Victoria. He cut her off, still looking at Emma. What's your name? Emma's voice came out steadier than she felt. Emma Harrison, sir. And your mother? Margaret Harrison. She was supposed to interview at 9:30 for the administrative position. Emma pulled the resume from its plastic sleeve, held it out like evidence in her own defense. She can't be here. She's in the hospital. Cancer, stage 4, but I can speak for her. I know her qualifications, her experience, everything you need to know. Please, just, why should I care? The question wasn't cruel, just direct, honest in a way that most people weren't. Why should your family's tragedy matter to me? The question hit Emma like a slap, but it was fair, brutally fair. Why should a millionaire CEO care about one more sob story in a city full of them? She had nothing to offer him except her pain, and pain was cheap, abundant, worthless in the currency of success. But Emma Harrison had been surviving on scraps for 14 years. She knew how to make nothing into something. It shouldn't, she said quietly. You're right. My pain doesn't obligate you to anything. But maybe, she took a breath, maybe compassion does. Maybe the fact that you could help, even if you don't have to, matters. My mother has worked herself to death, literally, trying to give me a better life. Now it's my turn. So I'm here, asking for a chance. Not for me, for her. Because she deserves it. Because she's earned it with 20 years of back-breaking work. Because... Her voice cracked. Because she's dying and I can't save her, but maybe I can give her this... This one thing. Please." Silence stretched across the lobby like a held breath. Rachel watched from behind her desk, one hand pressed to her mouth. Victoria's face had gone carefully blank, and Jonathan Mitchell stood there studying Emma as though she were a puzzle he needed to solve. Then, impossibly, the corner of his mouth lifted. Not quite a smile, but something close. 15 minutes, he said. Victoria's professional composure cracked. "John, this is highly irregular. We have protocols, procedures." 15 minutes, Victoria." His tone left no room for argument. "Clear conference room B. Have coffee sent up. The good stuff, not that swill from the break room." He turned to Emma, and for the first time since her father died, Emma felt seen. Really seen, not as a burden or a problem or a charity case, but as a person, someone whose pain mattered, whose fight mattered. "Don't waste my time, Miss Harrison," he said, not unkindly. "And don't lie to me. Those are my only rules." Emma clutched her mother's resume and nodded, unable to speak past the knot in her throat. Jonathan Mitchell turned toward the elevator. "Coming?" Emma's feet moved before her brain caught up, following him across that impossible expanse of marble. Behind her, she heard Victoria's sharp intake of breath, Rachel's soft gasp. But Emma didn't look back, couldn't look back. She had 15 minutes to save her mother's life. She stepped into the elevator beside Jonathan Mitchell, and the doors slid shut on the world she knew, opening onto something entirely unknown. The elevator rose in silence, broken only by the soft hum of machinery and Emma's ragged breathing. She stood as far from Jonathan Mitchell as the confined space allowed, acutely aware of the puddle forming at her feet, the way her borrowed blazer dripped steadily onto imported Italian marble inlay. He stood with his back to the mirrored wall, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. She'd expected questions. Small talk, maybe. The weather. Traffic. Anything to fill the uncomfortable void. Instead, he simply watched her with those sharp eyes, and Emma had the unsettling sensation of being dissected, examined, catalogued like a specimen under glass. When the doors finally opened on the 15th floor, Emma nearly gasped with relief. The executive level made the lobby look modest by comparison. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped around the entire space, offering a panoramic view of Boston that made Emma dizzy. The harbor in the distance, the tangle of streets below, the city spread out like something from a dream or a nightmare, depending on your vantage point. She'd lived in this city her whole life and had never seen it from this height. From up here, everything looked small, manageable, as if problems could be solved simply by having enough altitude. Jonathan led her down a hallway lined with abstract art that probably cost more than her mother's lifetime earnings, past offices where people in expensive suits typed on expensive computers and spoke in the coded language of money. They all looked up as she passed, this drowned, desperate girl tracking water across their pristine floors, and she saw the judgment in their eyes, the question, who let her in? Conference room B was all glass and chrome and leather chairs that probably cost what Emma made in 3 months. A table long enough to seat 20 stretched between them. Jonathan took the head, gestured for Emma to sit opposite him. The distance felt intentional, strategic, a reminder of the gulf between them. A young assistant appeared with coffee, actually appeared as if summoned by telepathy, set down 2 cups of something that smelled like it came from beans picked by angels, and vanished just as quickly. Emma's hands shook as she reached for hers, and she saw Jonathan notice. He noticed everything. "Tell me about your mother," he said. No preamble, no warning. Emma wrapped both hands around the coffee cup, letting the heat anchor her. "Margaret Harrison, 58 years old. She's worked at Massachusetts General Hospital for 20 years, started as a janitor on the night shift, worked her way up to supply manager." Her voice steadied as she spoke. muscle memory taking over. She'd practiced this with her mother, helped her prepare. Perfect attendance record until 3 weeks ago. References from 4 department heads. Experience in inventory management, staff scheduling, budget oversight. I didn't ask for a resume recitation. Jonathan's voice was gentle but firm. I asked about your mother. Who is she? What kind of person? The question caught Emma off guard. In all their preparation, they'd focused on qualifications, experience, skills, not on who Maggie Harrison was beneath the job titles and the bullet points. Emma's throat tightened. She's the kind of person who never buys anything for herself. Not clothes, not food she actually likes, not medicine when she's sick. Everything goes to me. Always has. Even now, even dying, she's more worried about me than herself. Jonathan leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. Go on. When I was 8, my father died. Construction accident on the D3 tower project. My mother was 6 months pregnant at the time. Emma watched Jonathan's face for reaction, saw something flicker there. Recognition, maybe, or pain. She miscarried 3 days after his funeral. Lost the baby, lost her husband, had an 8-year-old daughter to feed and no life insurance because my father's death was ruled employee negligence, which meant the company wasn't liable. The coffee burned her tongue, but Emma welcomed the pain. It kept her grounded, kept her from floating away on the tide of memory. She worked 3 jobs for 10 years. Janitor at Mass General, waitress at Joe's Diner on weekends, cleaning offices at night. I barely saw her. She'd leave before I woke up, come home after I was asleep. But she left notes. Emma's voice cracked. Every morning, a note on the refrigerator. I love you, Emma Bear. Make today count. Every single morning. For 10 years. Jonathan's expression hadn't changed, but his knuckles had gone white where they gripped the armrests of his chair. I got a full scholarship to Boston University. My mother cried for 3 days straight. Happy tears, she said. Said my father would be so proud. Said all the sacrifice was worth it because her daughter was going to get out, have a real future, never have to choose between heating and eating. Emma set down the coffee cup before she could drop it. I made it to junior year, 3.9 GPA. Dean's list every semester, 1 semester from graduation. What happened? Jonathan's voice was barely above a whisper. Cancer happened. Emma met his eyes directly. 3 weeks ago. Stage 4 lung cancer. 20 years of breathing and cleaning chemicals, working in hospital basements with poor ventilation, never going to the doctor because she couldn't afford to take time off. They give her weeks, maybe months if she's lucky, which she won't be because luck isn't something people like us get. So you dropped out. I withdrew. Started working 3 jobs, same as she did. Diner, cleaning service, food delivery, 18 hours a day trying to scrape together enough for her medication, her treatment, anything that might buy her more time. Emma's hands were shaking again. She clasped them in her lap. She doesn't know I withdrew. She thinks I'm still in school. Every time she asks about classes, I lie. Tell her about professors she taught me about months ago. Exams I already took. Because if she knew I'd given up everything she'd sacrificed for, it would kill her faster than the cancer. Jonathan stood abruptly, walked to the windows. Boston spread beneath them, indifferent to their small human dramas. When he spoke, his back was still turned. Your father. Thomas Harrison. What did he do at the D3 site? The question seemed to come from nowhere, derailing Emma's thoughts. He was a safety inspector. Why? And the accident. What exactly were you told? Emma's chest tightened. This wasn't about the job anymore. This was something else, something that felt dangerous in ways she couldn't name. Scaffolding collapse. They said he violated protocol, went into an unsafe area, that it was his fault. Why are you asking me this? Jonathan turned, and the look on his face made Emma's blood run cold. Not anger, not pity. Something worse. Recognition mixed with terrible certainty. Because my father taught construction engineering at MIT. His name was Robert Mitchell. He paused, let that sink in. And my mother was Catherine Mitchell, structural engineer. They both consulted on the D3 Tower project. Emma's mind raced, trying to connect dots that didn't want to connect. I don't understand. 3 months after your father died, the D3 Tower collapsed during its opening ceremony. 12 people died, including my parents. They'd been insisting on additional inspections, claiming the materials were substandard. The company ignored them. His voice was eerily calm, the kind of calm that came from years of holding back a scream. I was 15 years old. I've spent the last 20 years trying to figure out what really happened, who was responsible, why 3 people died trying to stop a disaster that killed 12 more anyway. The room tilted. Emma gripped the edge of the table. You think they're connected? My father and your parents? I don't think, Miss Harrison. I know. He returned to his seat, pulled a folder from beneath his tablet. Emma hadn't even noticed it there. He slid it across the table. I've been investigating the D3 collapse for 20 years. 5 years ago, I found references to a safety inspector who'd been making noise about the project, filed complaints with the city, with the contractor, with anyone who'd listen. Thomas Harrison. Your father. He died 3 weeks before he was scheduled to testify before a state commission about construction fraud. Emma's hands trembled as she opened the folder. Inside were documents, reports, photographs. Her father's face stared up at her from an old employee badge, younger, smiling, alive. Alongside it, investigation reports stamped accidental death in red letters that suddenly looked like lies. They killed him, Jonathan said quietly. Someone killed your father to stop him from exposing the truth. Then they killed my parents when they kept pushing. Then they let that building collapse and murdered 12 more people to destroy the evidence. He leaned forward. So you see, Miss Harrison, when you walked into my lobby today, soaking wet and desperate, I didn't see a charity case. I saw the daughter of a man who might have saved my parents if he'd lived long enough. Emma couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The room spun and tilted, and nothing made sense except the terrible, crushing weight of understanding. Her father hadn't died in an accident. He'd been murdered. And her mother had known, must have suspected, must have lived with that knowledge for 14 years while she scrubbed floors and served coffee and pretended everything was fine. Why are you telling me this? The words came out broken. Because I think you deserve the truth. Because I've spent half my life looking for answers and I just found someone who might have some. He paused. And because I'm going to hire you, Miss Harrison, not for your mother's position, for yourself, as my assistant. Full benefits, including health insurance that will cover your mother's treatment. Emma's breath caught. I can't. You can and you will. Because we have the same enemy. Someone out there killed both our families and got away with it. Someone powerful enough to cover it up for 20 years. Jonathan's eyes blazed with something between rage and hope. Help me find them. Help me get justice for your father, for my parents, for all of them. Emma stared at him, this stranger who'd just turned her entire world inside out, who'd taken the last 24 hours of hell and somehow made them even worse and better and more complicated than she could have imagined. I need to think, she whispered. No. His voice was gentle but immovable. You need to decide, right now. Because whoever did this, they're still out there, still powerful, still dangerous. And if they find out we're asking questions... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Emma thought of her mother, dying in a hospital bed, Thought of her father, murdered and called negligent. Thought of the 12 families destroyed by greed and lies. Thought of the choice her father had made, to speak truth even when it cost everything. She was Thomas Harrison's daughter, and Thomas Harrison had raised no cowards. "When do I start?" she said. Jonathan Mitchell smiled then, really smiled, the first genuine expression she'd seen from him. "Right now, we have work to do, Miss Harrison, and not much time to do it." Emma nodded, something settling in her chest. Purpose, maybe. Or just the cold clarity that came with stepping off a cliff and deciding to learn to fly on the way down. She'd come here to save her mother's life. Somehow, impossibly, she'd stumbled into something much bigger. A conspiracy, a cover-up. Justice delayed, but maybe, finally, after 20 years, within reach. "One condition," Emma said. "My mother can never know about any of this." "She's been through enough." Jonathan's smile faded, replaced by understanding. "Agreed." They sat there for a moment, two orphans bound by tragedy and determination, the city sprawling beneath them like a map of everything they'd lost and everything they still had to fight for. Then Jonathan stood, offering his hand. Emma took it, felt the strength in his grip, the unspoken promise, "We're in this together now." "Welcome to Mitchell Innovations, Miss Harrison," he said. "Try not to die." It should have been a joke. Neither of them laughed. Emma's first week at Mitchell Innovations passed in a blur of information overload and sleepless nights. Her official title was Executive Assistant to the CEO, which sounded impressive until she realized it meant she was expected to know everything about everything, while appearing to know nothing at all. Her desk occupied a corner of the 15th floor, not quite in Jonathan's office, but close enough that she could see him through the glass walls whenever he was there, which was always. The man seemed to operate on some inhuman schedule that didn't require sleep or food or any of the normal sustaining functions of life. He arrived before dawn and left long after midnight, and Emma had the distinct impression he only went home because even he couldn't justify sleeping at the office. The broken chair Victoria had assigned her on the first day was replaced within hours. Jonathan's doing, Emma suspected, though he never mentioned it. A new ergonomic model appeared while she was in the bathroom, along with a desk lamp, a company laptop, and a coffee maker that looked like it could pilot a spaceship. "Mr. Mitchell thought you might need these," the facilities manager had said, setting down the items with the reverent care of someone delivering religious artifacts. Emma hadn't known whether to laugh or cry. She settled for neither, just nodded her thanks, and got back to work. The work itself was overwhelming. Jonathan threw projects at her with barely any explanation, budgets to review, reports to compile, meetings to schedule with people whose names she recognized from Forbes covers. She was supposed to understand the company's entire operation within days, navigate corporate politics she didn't know existed, and somehow do it all, while maintaining the fiction that she was just a normal assistant and not someone investigating a 20-year-old conspiracy. But Emma had spent 14 years watching her mother work herself to exhaustion. She knew how to function on 4 hours of sleep, knew how to smile through pain, knew how to make herself invisible when necessary and indispensable when required. She learned fast, taught herself the company's financial software from YouTube videos watched on her phone during her other jobs. Yes, she still worked them, couldn't afford not to until her first paycheck cleared. She memorized names and faces and the complex web of relationships that governed office dynamics. She figured out that Jonathan took his coffee black, hated small talk, and had a tell when he was about to fire someone. His left eye twitched, just barely, like a hawk spotting prey. The other employees treated her with suspicion at first. Who was this girl who'd appeared from nowhere and somehow landed in the CEO's inner circle? The whispers followed her through hallways, into bathrooms, across the cafeteria. "I heard she's his girlfriend." "No, I heard she knew him from before, some family connection." She doesn't even have a college degree. How is she qualified? Emma ignored them all. She'd survived worse than office gossip. Victoria was a different problem entirely. The HR director watched Emma like a hawk studying a mouse, looking for any mistake, any slip, any excuse to eliminate this threat to the natural order. She assigned Emma the Miller account on day 3, a poisoned gift wrapped in professional courtesy. "Mr. Mitchell mentioned you have a background in accounting," Victoria had said, her smile sharp enough to draw blood. "The Miller account needs a complete financial restructuring. Previous manager couldn't handle it. Deadline is 2 weeks. I'm sure someone with your unique qualifications will find it manageable." Emma had taken the file and said nothing. The previous manager had been fired. The account was a disaster. 12 months of tangled finances, offshore holdings, shell companies layered like Russian dolls. It would take someone with years of experience to untangle. Emma had 3 years of college and desperation. She stayed until 3 in the morning that first night, spreadsheets swimming before her eyes, trying to find patterns in chaos. The numbers didn't make sense. The more she dug, the more wrong it all felt. Money flowing in circles, disappearing and reappearing in different forms, like a magic trick designed to hide something. She was so focused, she didn't hear Jonathan enter until he spoke. "You're still here." Emma jumped, knocking over her coffee. It spread across her desk in a dark tide, soaking papers and threatening her laptop. She lunged for the computer, salvaging it while the coffee dripped onto the floor. "Damn it," she muttered, grabbing tissues, trying to soak up the mess. "I'm sorry, I'll clean this up, Emma." Jonathan's voice was gentle. "Stop." She stopped, tissues clutched in her shaking hands, and looked up at him. He'd loosened his tie, rolled up his sleeves. He looked exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical tiredness and everything to do with carrying weight that never got lighter. "What are you working on?" he asked. "Miller account." Victoria assigned it. Emma gestured helplessly at the coffee-stained papers. "It's a mess. I'm trying to figure out the holding structure, but there's something off about the numbers. They don't add up right." Jonathan moved closer, studying the papers. His eyes narrowed. "Show me." Emma pulled up the digital files, walked him through what she'd found. The inconsistencies, the strange patterns, the way money seemed to flow in impossible directions. "Here," she said, pointing to a series of transactions. "These offshore accounts. They're receiving regular deposits from Miller's main holdings, but the amounts don't match the reported revenue. And look," she pulled up another screen. "These shell companies all share the same registered agent, but they're supposed to be independent subsidiaries." Jonathan was silent for a long moment. Then, "You taught yourself to see this?" "I taught myself everything." Emma's voice came out more bitter than intended. "College didn't exactly cover advanced financial fraud." "No." Jonathan's smile was grim. "It wouldn't." He sat down in the chair beside her desk, just sat, not towering over her, not maintaining that careful distance. "Emma, this account, Victoria gave this to you knowing you'd fail." "I'm not going to fail." "No, you're not. Because you just found something my entire accounting department missed." He tapped the screen. "These holdings, they've been altered. Someone's been moving money, covering their tracks. This isn't incompetence. It's deliberate." Emma's stomach dropped. "Victoria? Possibly. Probably." Jonathan's jaw tightened. "We need to be careful. Whoever's doing this, they're good. And they're close." Over the next week, they developed a routine. Jonathan would assign Emma impossible projects during the day, maintaining the fiction that she was just his assistant. At night, after everyone else left, they'd meet in his office and work on the real investigation. The pieces were starting to come together, slowly, painfully. Thomas Harrison's death, the D3 tower collapse, Jonathan's parents, all connected by a web of corruption that reached higher and deeper than either of them had imagined. Jonathan had been investigating for 20 years, but alone, in secret, making glacial progress. Now, with Emma's fresh eyes and desperate determination, things were moving faster. Too fast, maybe. "Your father kept records," Jonathan told her one night, spreading documents across his conference table. "Before he died, he documented everything, the substandard materials, the bribes, the threats. He was building a case." Emma's hands trembled as she touched the papers. Her father's handwriting, still alive on the page after 14 years. "Where did you get these?" "I've been looking for them for years. Found them in a storage unit 3 months ago. Rented under a false name. Payment set up to auto-renew from an offshore account. Your father was smart. He knew they might come for him. But they came anyway." Emma's voice was hollow. "Yes, and then 3 months later, they eliminated my parents, and then they collapsed the building to destroy any remaining evidence." Jonathan's eyes were hard. 12 people died that day. 12 families destroyed, all to cover up what your father discovered. "What did he discover?" Jonathan pulled out another file. Inside, a photograph. A man in his 60s, silver hair, politician's smile. Senator William Redstone. He owned Redstone Construction through a series of shell companies. He embezzled millions over the years using substandard materials to pocket the difference. Your father found the paper trail. My parents confirmed it structurally. The building was going to fail. They tried to stop it. Emma stared at the photograph. This man, this smiling, powerful man, he'd killed her father, killed Jonathan's parents, killed 12 innocent people, and he was still out there, still powerful, still free. "We need to prove it," she said. "We will." Jonathan's voice was steel. "But we have to be smart. Redstone has connections everywhere. One wrong move and we're—" He didn't finish. Didn't have to. They both knew what happened to people who threatened powerful men. Emma worked through those first weeks in a haze of grief and purpose. During the day, she played her role, the assistant who'd lucked into a good job, who was learning the ropes, who smiled and nodded and fetched coffee. At night, she became someone else, someone dangerous, someone who refused to let her father's death mean nothing. Her mother's health deteriorated. Emma visited every morning before work, every evening after, sitting beside that hospital bed and lying about school, about her job, about everything. Maggie was getting weaker. The cancer was winning. The doctors had stopped using words like treatment and started using phrases like comfort care and quality of remaining time. Emma held her mother's hand and felt her slipping away, and the only thing that kept her from falling apart was the investigation, the work, the promise that her father's death would matter. "How's school, baby?" Maggie would ask, voice thin as paper. "Good, Mama." Dean's List again. "Your father would be so proud." "I know, Mama, I know." Lies built on lies, but necessary, protective. Because if Maggie knew the truth, that Emma had given up everything, that she was chasing ghosts and conspiracies instead of building a future, it would kill her faster than the cancer. On day 7, Jonathan found Emma crying in the bathroom at 2 in the morning. She'd hidden in a stall, trying to muffle the sobs, but grief was loud when it needed to be. He didn't say anything, just waited until she emerged, face blotchy and eyes red, and handed her his handkerchief. Actual cloth, monogrammed. Emma had forgotten such things existed. "My mother's dying," she said, because the truth was too big to hold anymore. "And I'm here playing detective instead of being with her." "You're fighting for her," Jonathan said quietly. "That counts." "Does it? When she doesn't even know? When she'll die thinking I'm still in school, still building some bright future that doesn't exist?" Jonathan leaned against the sink, arms crossed. My parents died thinking I'd be okay, that I'd go to college, have a normal life, be happy. They died not knowing that I'd spend the next 20 years obsessed with their deaths, that I'd build this entire company just to have the resources to investigate, that I'd become exactly the kind of person they wouldn't recognize. Emma looked at him, really looked, saw past the expensive suit and the corner office and the net worth that could buy small countries. Saw the 15-year-old boy who'd lost everything and spent 20 years trying to make it mean something. "Does it get easier?" she asked. "No." He handed her a tissue. "But you get stronger, strong enough to carry it." They stood there in that bathroom, two people bound by loss and determination, and Emma felt something shift. Not healing, too soon for that, but recognition, kinship, the understanding that some burdens were too heavy to carry alone. "Come on," Jonathan said finally. "Let's get back to work. We have a senator to destroy." Emma wiped her eyes, straightened her spine, and followed him back into the war they'd both been fighting alone for far too long. Week 3 began with catastrophe dressed as opportunity. Emma arrived at 6:30 in the morning, earlier than usual, driven by insomnia and the restless anxiety that had become her constant companion. The office was dark except for the glow of emergency lighting along the baseboards. She made coffee in the break room, the ritual providing the illusion of normalcy, and settled at her desk to continue untangling the Miller account. She'd been at it for 20 minutes when her phone rang. The hospital. Her blood turned to ice. "Miss Harrison, your mother's had a collapse. We need you here immediately." The coffee cup slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. Brown liquid spread across white tile like blood, like endings, like everything falling apart at once. Emma was in the elevator before conscious thought caught up, jabbing the button repeatedly as if urgency could make physics move faster. Her hand shook so badly she could barely hold her phone to dial Jonathan's number. He answered on the first ring. "Emma? It's my mother." The words came out broken. "Hospital called. Collapse. I have to. I'm sorry, I know the Jacobson meeting is at 8 and the reports aren't finished, but I have to." "Emma, stop." His voice cut through her panic like a blade. "Go. I'll handle everything here. Just go." She made it to Mass General in 15 minutes, a 25-minute drive that she'd never remember taking. The ICU was on the 4th floor. She'd walked these halls so many times in the past weeks, they'd become as familiar as her own apartment. More familiar, maybe. She spent more time here than anywhere else. The doctor met her outside her mother's room. Dr. Patricia Chin, 50-something, kind eyes that had seen too much death to sugarcoat anything. "Miss Harrison, your mother's stable for now, but she's very weak. Her organs are starting to fail. We can provide supportive care, but..." Dr. Chen's pause spoke volumes. "You should prepare yourself." Emma nodded, unable to speak past the stone in her throat. She pushed through the door. Maggie Harrison lay in the bed like a shadow of herself. The cancer had stripped away everything: weight, color, vitality. What remained was essence. The core of the woman who'd raised Emma alone, who'd worked herself to exhaustion, who'd sacrificed everything for a daughter who couldn't save her. "Mama?" Emma took her mother's hand. The bones felt like bird wings under papery skin. Maggie's eyes fluttered open. The morphine made them distant, dreamy. "Baby girl, shouldn't you be in class?" The lie came automatically. "It's early, Mama. Before classes start." "Always so studious. Like your father." Maggie's smile was the saddest thing Emma had ever seen. "He'd be so proud of you." Emma's vision blurred. She blinked hard, forcing back tears. Her mother didn't need to see her break. "I know, Mama." "Emma." Maggie's grip tightened. Barely pressure, but urgent. Need to tell you something. About your father. Emma's heart seized. Mama, you need to rest. No. No more rest. Need you to know. Maggie's breathing was labored, each word a struggle. Your father. The accident. Wasn't accident. The room tilted. Emma gripped the bed rail. What? They killed him. Tears leaked from Maggie's eyes, running down into her hair. He found something. Construction fraud. Millions of dollars. He was going to expose them. They threatened us. Said they'd hurt you if he talked. But Thomas, your father was so brave, so stupid brave. He kept pushing, and they... Mama, stop. Please, you're upsetting yourself. They came to me after. Men in suits. Said if I ever told anyone, they'd kill you too. Make it look like accident. I believed them. God help me. I believed them. Maggie was sobbing now, the sound rattling in her ruined lungs. 14 years. 14 years I kept quiet. Let them call your father negligent. Let his name be dirt. Because I had to protect you. Emma couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Her mother had known. All these years, she'd known, and she'd carried that knowledge alone because telling the truth meant putting Emma in danger. I'm so sorry, baby. So sorry you grew up without him. Sorry I let them win. But I couldn't lose you, too. I couldn't. Maggie's words dissolved into coughing, harsh and wet. Mama, please. You need to calm down. Emma reached for the call button, but Maggie grabbed her wrist with surprising strength. Promise me. Promise you won't go looking. Don't try to find them. They're too powerful. They'll kill you like they killed him. Promise me, Emma. Emma looked at her dying mother and felt the weight of the lie she was about to tell. But what else could she do? Tell the truth. That she'd already found them? That she was already in danger? That everything Maggie had sacrificed to keep her safe had been for nothing? I promise, Mama. I promise. Maggie sagged back against the pillows, relief washing over her ravaged features. Good girl. Now I can rest, can see your father again. Tell him you're safe. Tell him... Her eyes drifted closed. The monitors beeped steadily, but slower. Emma sat there holding her mother's hand and felt something inside her chest crack open. Not break. Breaking would have been merciful. This was worse. This was the slow split of foundation stones, the kind of damage that meant nothing would ever be stable again. She called Jonathan at 7:45. He answered immediately. How is she? Stable. For now. Emma's voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. Someone hollow. But John, she knew about my father. About the murder. She's known for 14 years. Silence on the other end. Then, I'm coming. No. You have the Jacobson meeting. Fuck the meeting. I'm coming. He arrived 20 minutes later, still in his suit but disheveled, tie loose, hair pushed back like he'd been running his hands through it. Emma was in the waiting room, staring at nothing, feeling everything. Jonathan sat beside her. Didn't touch her, didn't speak, just sat there, solid and present, while Emma's world continued its collapse. They threatened her, Emma said finally. Said they'd kill me if she talked. So she didn't. For 14 years she let them destroy my father's name, let people think he was negligent, let him die for nothing, all to keep me safe. Emma, and I promised her, just now, promised I wouldn't go looking for them, wouldn't try to find who killed him. Emma laughed, the sound broken and bitter. I looked her in the eye while she's dying and I lied. Because what else could I do? Tell her the truth. That I've already found them. That I'm already neck deep in exactly what she spent 14 years trying to protect me from? Jonathan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful. "We can stop. Right now. Walk away. Let it go." Emma turned to him, and something in her expression made him flinch. "No," she said. "We can't. Because my mother spent 14 years in silence, and my father died for nothing, and 12 families lost people they loved, and that man, that senator, is still out there, still powerful, still free, walking around like he didn't destroy dozens of lives for money." She stood, paced to the window. Boston sprawled below, indifferent to individual suffering. "I'm not stopping. I can't stop. My father tried to expose the truth, and it killed him. My mother tried to keep me safe, and it's killing her. Someone has to finish this." "Emma!" Jonathan stood too, moved toward her. "If we keep going, you're in danger. Real danger. These people don't hesitate to kill. I know. I don't care. I care." The words came out fierce, urgent. "I care if you die. I care if—" He stopped himself, jaw tight. Emma looked at him, really looked. Saw past the CEO, the investigator, the man with a mission. Saw someone who'd spent 20 years alone with his grief, who'd built walls high enough to keep everyone out, who was terrified of letting someone in only to lose them too. "I'm not going to die," she said softly. "And neither are you. We're going to finish this. Together. And then we're going to watch that bastard burn." Jonathan studied her face, searching for something. Doubt, maybe. Fear. Self-preservation. He didn't find any of it. "Okay," he said finally. "Okay. But we do this smart. Careful. No unnecessary risks." "Agreed." They stood there in the waiting room, two people who'd been fighting alone for too long, now bound together by shared purpose and something else, something neither was ready to name yet. Emma's phone buzzed. A text from the nurse's station. "Your mother is asking for you." She turned to leave, then stopped. "John, thank you for being here." "Always," he said, and meant it. Emma returned to her mother's room, pushed through the door, and found Maggie awake and surprisingly alert. The morphine had worn off enough for clarity, but not enough to take away the pain. Emma could see it in the lines around her mother's eyes, the way she held herself carefully as if movement might shatter something. "Baby." Maggie's voice was stronger than before. Urgent. "Bring him. Jonathan Mitchell. I need to speak with him." Emma's stomach dropped. "Mama, how do you—" "I'm not stupid, Emma. Or blind. I know where you're working." "Know who he is?" Maggie's eyes were sharp despite the illness. "Robert Mitchell's son. I need to talk to him, please." Emma retrieved Jonathan from the waiting room. He entered the hospital room with the careful control of someone walking into an ambush, not sure what to expect but braced for impact. Maggie watched him approach, and something flickered across her face. Recognition. Memory. Pain. "You look like him," she said. "Your father. Same eyes. Same way of standing like you're ready to fight the world." Jonathan moved to the bedside, and Emma saw him transform. The hard edges softened. The CEO disappeared. What remained was just a man who'd lost his parents too young, facing a woman who understood that loss. "Mrs. Harrison." "Margaret." "Please." Maggie gestured weakly to the chair. "Sit. Need to tell you something. About your father. About mine." Jonathan sat. Emma hovered near the door, watching this collision of histories, of griefs that had been traveling parallel paths for 20 years. "Your father, Robert, he tried to save my Thomas." Maggie's voice was fading again, but she pushed through. "The night before Thomas died, Robert called him, told him to run, said the people they were investigating were dangerous, said Thomas should take the evidence and go to the FBI, witness protection, whatever it took. But Thomas, her voice cracked. Thomas said he couldn't leave the evidence behind, said it was the only copy, the only proof, said he had to get it to the state commission hearing. Jonathan leaned forward, intent. What evidence? Proof of the embezzlement, the faulty materials. It wasn't just Arthur Ashford, the engineer. There were others, higher up. Maggie's breathing was labored. Senator William Redstone. He owned the construction company, owned politicians, inspectors, everyone who should have stopped it. Thomas documented everything, 15 years of fraud across dozens of projects. Where is it? Jonathan's voice was controlled, but Emma heard the undercurrent. This was it. The missing piece. The proof they needed. Hidden. Thomas hid it before they got him. Maggie's hand fumbled for something on the bedside table. Emma moved forward, helped her grasp a worn envelope. The key to a storage unit. Payment set up to auto-renew forever. I couldn't go there. Too afraid they were watching. But you could find it. She pressed the envelope into Jonathan's hands. Inside, a key and a piece of paper with an address. Everything's there. Financial records, emails, photos, witness statements. Everything you need to prove Redstone ordered the hits. To prove the building collapse was murder, not accident. Maggie's eyes moved between Jonathan and Emma. Your father's tried to stop him. Now it's your turn. Finish what they started. Jonathan's knuckles were white where he gripped the envelope. Why now? Why not before? Because I'm dying, and I'm tired of being afraid, and... Maggie looked at Emma, love and sorrow mingling on her face. Because my daughter deserves better than a mother who stayed silent while evil walked free. Mama, Emma's voice broke. Do it, Maggie said, fierce, despite her weakness. Get justice for Thomas, for Robert and Catherine, for all of them. Don't let their deaths mean nothing. Jonathan stood, envelope clutched in his hand like a weapon. I promise. We'll make him pay. Maggie smiled, the first real smile Emma had seen in weeks. Good. That's good. Her eyes drifted closed. Can rest now. Tell Thomas it's done. Tell him. The machines began to alarm. Slowly at first, then urgent. Emma lunged for the call button as medical staff flooded the room. They pushed Emma and Jonathan out into the hallway, while inside doctors worked to stabilize Maggie's failing body. Emma stood pressed against the wall, Jonathan beside her, both of them holding their breath as if they could will Maggie Harrison to keep breathing too. After 15 minutes that felt like hours, Dr. Chen emerged. Her expression told them everything. She's stable. But Miss Harrison, you need to understand this is temporary. Her body is shutting down. Days, maybe hours. I'm sorry. Emma nodded, numb. Jonathan's hand found hers, squeezed. She didn't pull away. They returned to Maggie's room. She was unconscious now, the machines breathing for her, keeping her tethered to life by wires and drugs and sheer technological stubbornness. Emma sat beside the bed and took her mother's hand. It was cold, getting colder. John, she whispered, go to the storage unit. Get the evidence. I'll stay here. Emma, please. She gave us this. We can't waste time. If Redstone finds out, she told us, if he has people watching, Emma's voice steadied with purpose. Go. Find the proof. I'll call you if... When? She couldn't say it. Jonathan hesitated, torn, then nodded. He squeezed Emma's shoulder, brief, grounding, and left. Emma sat in that sterile room, holding her mother's cooling hand, listening to machines breathe for someone who was already gone in all the ways that mattered, and felt the full weight of what was coming. The fight, the exposure, the reckoning. Her mother had been silent for 14 years to keep Emma safe. Emma would be loud for whatever time remained. She'd scream the truth until the whole world heard, until justice came, or until she joined her father in whatever came after. Either way, the silence was over. Emma sat beside her mother's hospital bed for 3 hours before her phone buzzed. Jonathan's name lit up the screen. "I found it," he said without preamble. His voice carried an edge she'd never heard before, something between triumph and horror. "Emma, your father documented everything. 15 years of evidence, financial records, emails, photographs, witness testimonies. It's all here." Emma's grip tightened on the phone. Around her, machines beeped their steady rhythm, counting down the remainder of her mother's life in electronic pulses. "How bad is it?" "Worse than we thought. Redstone didn't just embezzle from D3 Tower. It was systematic. Dozens of projects over 15 years. He stole over $40 million, used substandard materials on government contracts, paid off inspectors, bribed city officials." Jonathan's breathing was uneven, like he'd been running. "Emma, there are at least 8 other building failures documented here. Smaller than D3, but still. Injuries, deaths, all covered up. Your father found all of it." Emma closed her eyes. 8 other failures. How many people? How many families destroyed while Senator Redstone walked free, shook hands, smiled for cameras? "There's more," Jonathan continued. "Arthur Ashford, Victoria's father. He wasn't the mastermind. He was just the engineer who implemented the fraud. The orders came from higher up, from Redstone directly. Your father has emails, recorded phone calls, everything." "Recorded calls?" Emma's eyes snapped open. That's enough to prosecute. That's why they killed him. He had everything. He was 3 days away from testifying before a state grand jury when he accidentally fell from scaffolding." Jonathan's voice went cold. "They arranged it to look like his fault, made him seem negligent, destroyed his reputation so no one would look deeper." Emma thought of her father, Thomas Harrison, careful and cautious, who'd taught her to always check her surroundings, to never take unnecessary risks. The idea that he'd somehow been careless enough to fall from scaffolding was absurd. She'd always known it. In some deep place she'd been afraid to examine. Now the confirmation made her stomach turn. "What about your parents?" she asked quietly. "They're in here too. My father, he was working with yours. Comparing notes, building the case together. After your father died, my parents kept pushing, demanding investigations, filing complaints, refusing to sign off on the D3 inspection." Jonathan's voice cracked. "Redstone had them killed too. Made it look like the building collapse was accidental, that they just happened to be in the wrong place. But it wasn't. The collapse was triggered deliberately. To destroy evidence and eliminate witnesses simultaneously." Emma felt something cold settle in her chest. 12 people had died in that collapse. 12 innocent people killed to cover up murder and fraud. The scale of it was staggering. "Victoria," Emma said suddenly, "does she know about her father's role?" "I don't know, but there's correspondence here between Arthur Ashford and Redstone after your father's death. Arthur was having second thoughts. Talked about going to police, confessing everything. 3 months later, he was dead. Suicide, supposedly." Jonathan paused. "Emma, I don't think it was suicide." Emma's mind raced. Victoria had been 12 when her father died, a child who'd lost her parent and spent the next 20 years building walls of ice to protect herself from that grief. If she knew the truth, if she knew her father had been murdered just like Emma's and Jonathan's parents. "We need to tell her," Emma said. "What?" "Emma, she's been sabotaging you from day one. She deserves to know the truth about her father, just like we did." Emma looked at her mother, unconscious and dying. My mother kept silent for 14 years to protect me. Maybe Victoria has been keeping silent to protect her father's memory. Either way, she has a right to know. Jonathan was quiet for a long moment. Okay, but not yet. First, we need to secure this evidence. Make copies. Get it somewhere safe. If Redstone finds out we have this, he'll kill us too. Emma finished the thought calmly. Strange how easy it was to say. How the possibility of her own death felt almost mundane compared to everything else. How long do you need? 24 hours. I'm taking everything to a secure location, making digital copies, putting the originals in a safety deposit box with instructions to release everything if anything happens to us. His voice softened. How's your mother? Emma looked at Maggie's face, so still it could have been carved from wax. Dying. The doctor said days, maybe hours. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Emma. Don't be sorry. Just finish this. Make it mean something. Emma's throat tightened. My father died for this evidence. Your parents died trying to expose the truth. My mother spent 14 years in silence. We owe it to them to finish it. We will. I promise. I'll call you when everything's secure. Emma ended the call and sat in the heavy silence of the hospital room. Outside, Boston moved through its evening routine, indifferent to individual suffering. Somewhere in that sprawling city, Senator Redstone was probably having dinner, laughing with colleagues, planning his next move in whatever political game occupied his attention. He had no idea that 20 years of carefully buried secrets were about to surface. The door opened. Emma expected a nurse, but Victoria Ashford walked in instead. She looked different without her armor of professional coldness. Her hair was loose, falling around her shoulders. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, the first time Emma had seen her in anything but a power suit. Her eyes were red, as if she'd been crying. Emma? Victoria's voice was barely above a whisper. I heard about your mother. I needed to. She stopped, struggling for words. Emma waited. Let the silence stretch. I'm sorry, Victoria said finally. For everything. For trying to sabotage you. For the Miller account. For... Her voice broke. I was trying to protect something that doesn't deserve protection. Emma studied her. What do you mean? Victoria moved closer, but stopped at the foot of the bed as if afraid to come nearer. My father, Arthur Ashford. He was the chief engineer on D3 Tower. Did you know that? I know. Victoria's eyes widened. You? How? Jonathan's been investigating the D3 collapse for 20 years. My father was the safety inspector who discovered the fraud. Your father implemented it, and Senator Redstone orchestrated all of it. Emma's voice was steady, factual. They killed my father to silence him. Then they killed Jonathan's parents. Then they collapsed the building to destroy the evidence. Victoria swayed slightly, gripping the bed rail. No, my father wouldn't. He was a good man. He made mistakes, but your father documented his guilt before he died. Left evidence. My father has it, had it. Emails between him and Redstone, phone recordings, financial records showing the bribes he received. Emma's voice gentled. Victoria, I don't think your father killed himself. I think Redstone had him murdered too. Victoria's face crumpled. She collapsed into the chair beside the bed, all her carefully constructed defenses shattering. I knew, she whispered. Deep down, I always knew. The suicide note. It didn't sound like him. The handwriting was wrong. But I was 12 and terrified, and everyone said it was grief, that he couldn't live with the guilt, and I wanted to believe them. Emma watched Victoria cry with the messy abandon of someone who'd held it in too long. You've been protecting his memory. I've been protecting myself. Victoria looked up, mascara running, eyes devastated. If I admitted the truth, If I let myself see what really happened, then I had to face that my father was murdered, that someone out there killed him and got away with it, and I was too afraid to do anything about it." She laughed bitterly. "So instead I became like them, cold, ruthless, willing to destroy people who threatened my carefully constructed lies. You tried to destroy me." "Yes." Victoria didn't flinch from it. "Because you reminded me of what I should have been. Brave, willing to fight, willing to risk everything for truth and justice and people you love. You walked into that lobby soaking wet and desperate, and you fought anyway, and I hated you for it, because I stopped fighting 20 years ago." Emma felt something shift in her chest. Not forgiveness. Too soon for that. Maybe impossible ever. But understanding, recognition of shared trauma, shared loss, shared ways of surviving that weren't really survival at all. "Jonathan found the evidence," Emma said. "Everything your father documented before he died, everything my father collected. We're going to expose Redstone, make sure everyone knows what he did, to our fathers, to Jonathan's parents, to 12 innocent people in that building collapse, to all of it." Victoria's hands trembled. "He'll kill you, both of you, the moment he finds out." "Then he'll kill us." Emma's voice was eerily calm. "But the evidence will survive. Jonathan's making sure of it. Even if we die, the truth gets out." "That's not—" "Emma, you can't—" Victoria stood abruptly, pacing. "You're 22 years old. You have your whole life ahead of you. You can't throw it away for justice? For truth? For making sure my father's death meant something?" Emma's eyes were hard. "What would you have me do, Victoria? Walk away? Let Redstone keep living his comfortable life while our fathers rot in the ground?" Victoria stopped pacing. Stood there in the middle of that hospital room, caught between her fear and something else. Something that looked almost like courage trying to remember how to exist. "I have evidence too," she said quietly. "Things my father left. Things I've been hiding for 20 years because I was too afraid to look at them." She met Emma's eyes. "If you're really doing this, if you're really going after Redstone, then use them. Use everything. And if he comes for you—" Her voice hardened. "He'll have to go through me first." Emma stared at her. This woman who'd tried to destroy her, who'd sabotaged and undermined and done everything possible to make Emma fail, now offering to stand beside her, to fight. "Why?" Emma asked. "Why now?" Victoria's smile was sad and broken and somehow beautiful. "Because I'm tired of being afraid. Because our fathers deserved better. Because—" She looked at Maggie, unconscious and dying. "Because your mother spent 14 years in silence to protect you, and the least I can do is spend whatever time I have left making noise." The machines beeped their steady countdown. Outside, evening settled over Boston in shades of orange and purple, and in that hospital room 2 women who'd been enemies found themselves on the same side of a war that had been raging for 20 years. Emma's phone buzzed. Jonathan again. "Evidence is secured. Multiple copies in multiple locations. If anything happens to us, it all goes public automatically." A pause. "Emma, there's something else. The Miller account, the one Victoria gave you, it's connected. The offshore holdings, the shell companies, they all trace back to Redstone. He's still moving money, still operating. Victoria must have known. That's why she gave it to you. Either to see if you'd find it or to get you killed for finding it." Emma looked at Victoria, who stood there with tears still wet on her face. "She knew," Emma said into the phone, "and she's with me now. She wants to help." Silence on the other end. Then, "Can we trust her?" Victoria's eyes met Emma's. In them, Emma saw fear and shame and determination and something else. The desperate hope of someone who'd been drowning for 20 years, finally finding something solid to grab onto. "Yes," Emma said. "We can trust her. Then tell her to bring everything she has. We're going to need it. Jonathan's voice went hard. Because in 24 hours, we're going to war. Emma ended the call, turned to Victoria. Do you have the evidence with you? At my apartment. I can bring it tonight. Do it. And Victoria? Emma waited until she had the other woman's full attention. Thank you for choosing the right side. Finally. Victoria nodded, unable to speak, and left. Emma returned to her mother's bedside, took that cold hand again, leaned close. Mama, she whispered, we're going to do it. We're going to finish what Daddy started. Make sure everyone knows the truth. Make sure Redstone pays for what he did. Maggie didn't respond, didn't move. But Emma could have sworn. Maybe it was wishful thinking, maybe it was the morphine-induced dreaming of an exhausted mind, but Emma could have sworn her mother's fingers tightened just slightly. One last squeeze. One last acknowledgement. Permission to fight. Emma sat back, feeling the weight of what was coming settle onto her shoulders like a mantle. In 24 hours, they would destroy a senator, expose 20 years of murder and corruption, risk everything for justice that might not even come. But for the first time since her father died, Emma felt something other than grief and exhaustion. She felt purpose. She felt ready. The phone call came at 3:47 a.m. Emma jerked awake in the hospital chair, neck stiff from hours of uncomfortable sleep. For a disoriented moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then the machine's steady beeping reminded her, ICU, her mother, dying. Her phone vibrated again, insistent. Jonathan's name glowed on the screen. John? Her voice was rough with sleep and exhaustion. Emma, we have a problem. He sounded wide awake, alert in that hyper-focused way that meant crisis. Someone accessed the Miller account files remotely 2 hours ago, from an IP address registered to Redstone Construction. Emma's blood went cold. She sat up straight, heart hammering. They know. They know we found it. Worse, they know we've been investigating. The access logs show someone looking specifically at the files you flagged, the offshore accounts, the shell companies. They're covering their tracks, moving money, destroying records. Jonathan's keyboard clacked in the background. Emma, we need to move now. If we wait, the evidence disappears. Emma looked at her mother. Maggie hadn't stirred in hours. The machines breathed for her, keeping her body functioning while her spirit drifted somewhere between here and gone. Dr. Chen had said hours, maybe a day. Emma had planned to stay until the end, hold her mother's hand, be there when... Emma! Jonathan's voice pulled her back. I know the timing is... I know what I'm asking. But if we don't act now, everything your father died for disappears. Everything we've worked for. All of it. Gone. Emma's hand tightened on her mother's. Cold. So cold. What do you need me to do? Meet me at the office. Bring Victoria and whatever evidence she has. We're calling a press conference for 8 a.m. Before Redstone can mobilize his defenses, before he can spin the narrative, we hit him hard and fast with everything. A press conference? John, we need to go to the police, the FBI. They're compromised. Redstone has people everywhere, cops, judges, federal agents. Your father tried the official channels. It got him killed. Jonathan's voice was grim. We go public. All at once. Every news outlet simultaneously. Make it too big to bury. Emma closed her eyes, tried to think through the exhaustion and grief. If we do this, if we expose everything, Redstone will know it was us. He'll come after us. He's already coming after us. The moment they accessed those files, we became targets. A pause. Emma, I won't lie to you. This is dangerous, possibly fatal. If you want out, I understand. You've already given more than anyone should have to. I'm in. The words came without hesitation. My father died for this. My mother kept silent for 14 years. I'm not walking away now. Okay. Relief colored Jonathan's voice. Okay, can you leave? Your mother. Emma looked at Maggie's face. Peaceful, already halfway gone. She told me to finish it, to get justice. That's what I'm doing. I'm sorry, Don't, I'll be there in 30 minutes. Emma stood, bones aching. She bent and kissed her mother's forehead, whispered against cooling skin. I love you, Mama. I'm going to make it right. I promise. Maggie didn't respond. The machines kept their steady rhythm, counting down to an end that Emma wouldn't be there to witness. Emma found Dr. Chen at the nurse's station. I have to leave for a few hours. If anything happens. Dr. Chen's eyes were kind. Too kind. The kindness of someone who'd delivered bad news so many times it had become routine. I'll call you immediately. But Emma, you should know. She's stable now. Unconscious, but stable. She could stay like this for hours, even a day or two. Or she could go at any moment. Yes, or that. Dr. Chen touched Emma's arm. Whatever you need to do, do it. She'd want you to live your life, not sit here watching her die. Emma nodded, unable to speak, and left before the tears could fall. The drive to Mitchell Innovations was a blur. Boston's streets were empty at 4 a.m., that strange dead hour when the city held its breath between night and day. Emma's hands shook on the steering wheel. She kept seeing her mother's face, kept hearing the machine's steady beeping like a countdown clock. Victoria was already there when Emma arrived, looking as exhausted as Emma felt. She'd brought 3 boxes of files, evidence her father had hidden, documents she'd been too afraid to examine for 20 years. I went through them, Victoria said, setting the boxes on Jonathan's conference table. Her voice was hollow. All of it, every document, every email, every photograph. My father... She stopped, swallowed hard. My father was trying to stop it, at the end. He was gathering evidence against Redstone, planning to go to authorities. That's why Redstone killed him. Jonathan appeared in the doorway, arms full of his own files. Made it look like suicide to discredit any evidence he might have left behind. Victoria's laugh was bitter. And I spent 20 years believing it was guilt, that he couldn't live with what he'd done, when really, he couldn't live because Redstone didn't let him. Emma moved to the table, started sorting through documents, financial records, emails, photographs of substandard materials, falsified inspections, bribed officials, 20 years of systematic corruption laid bare. How many reporters did you contact? All of them. Jonathan pulled up his laptop, showing a mass email ready to send. Every major news outlet in Boston, plus New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, even the local stations. At 6 a.m. this email goes out with full documentation. By the time Redstone wakes up, the story will be everywhere. He'll deny it, Victoria said. Claim the documents are fabricated, that we have a vendetta, which is why we're holding a press conference. Live, on camera, with all the evidence displayed. 3 witnesses, 3 people connected to his crimes, presenting undeniable proof. Jonathan looked at them both. He can't spin away from this. Not when we have financial records, emails in his own words, testimony from... His phone rang. Unknown number. Jonathan's face went tight. He knows. Don't answer it, Emma said. Jonathan answered it. Put it on speaker. Senator William Redstone's voice filled the room, smooth, cultured, utterly controlled. Mr. Mitchell, I believe we need to talk. I don't think we have anything to discuss, Senator. Oh, I disagree. You've been quite busy lately. accessing private files, making copies of sensitive documents, involving a pause, deliberately waited, involving Miss Harrison in matters that are, shall we say, above her pay grade. Emma's skin crawled. He knew her name, knew exactly who she was, what she was doing. "If you're calling to threaten us," Jonathan started. "Threaten? No. I'm calling to make an offer. A generous one." Redstone's voice stayed pleasant, reasonable, the tone of a man used to getting what he wanted. "You have documents you believe are evidence of wrongdoing. I'm prepared to offer you $20 million to destroy them. Additionally, Miss Harrison's mother would receive the finest medical care available, experimental treatments, private specialists, whatever it takes to extend her life." Emma's heart stopped. $20 million. Treatment for her mother. Everything she'd been desperately trying to achieve, offered on a silver platter. In exchange for what? Jonathan's voice was flat. Our silence? Your understanding. These matters are complex. Things happened 20 years ago that, yes, were unfortunate. But destroying me won't bring back the dead. It won't undo past mistakes. All it will do is harm dozens of families who depend on my companies for employment, destabilize important infrastructure projects, create chaos that helps no one. "Except it would bring justice," Emma said, finding her voice. "For my father, for Jonathan's parents, for 12 innocent people who died in that building collapse." Ah, Miss Harrison, so like your father, idealistic to a fault. Redstone's tone shifted, became almost paternal. "Your father was a good man who made an unfortunate decision to involve himself in matters he didn't fully understand. What happened to him was regrettable. But it doesn't have to be repeated." The threat was clear, unmistakable. Jonathan's jaw tightened. "We're not interested in your money, Senator. Then perhaps you're interested in self-preservation. I have considerable resources, Mr. Mitchell, considerable influence. If you pursue this foolish course of action, I can make life very difficult for you." For Miss Harrison, for everyone you care about." A pause. "Your assistant Victoria Ashford, for instance, Arthur's daughter. I'd hate to see her dragged through another scandal, to have her father's name destroyed publicly, to have everyone know—" "You son of a bitch!" Victoria's voice shook with rage. "You killed my father, made it look like suicide, let me believe for 20 years that he abandoned me." "Victoria, such language. Your father made choices, poor choices. I simply encouraged him to take responsibility for them." "You murdered him!" Victoria was on her feet, hands braced on the table. "Just like you murdered Thomas Harrison, just like you murdered Robert and Catherine Mitchell, just like you killed 12 people to cover your tracks." Redstone's sigh carried through the speaker, theatrical, bored. "Such histrionics. Very well. If you're determined to be difficult, then understand this. Those documents will never see light of day. I have judges, district attorneys, media executives, all in positions to bury this story before it breathes. And if somehow you manage to cause me inconvenience, then I'll ensure all 3 of you face criminal charges: theft of proprietary documents, defamation, fraud. I'll destroy your lives so thoroughly that—" Jonathan ended the call. The silence that followed was deafening. "He's bluffing," Victoria said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Maybe." Jonathan stared at his phone. "Or maybe he really does have enough power to bury this." Emma thought of her mother, dying, thought of the treatment Redstone had offered, experimental procedures, private specialists, things that might buy days, weeks, maybe months, time she could spend with Maggie, time to say goodbye properly, $20 million, her mother's life, everything she'd been fighting for. All she had to do was stay silent. Let another murderer walk free. Let her father's death mean nothing. Let 20 years of corruption continue unchallenged. We go forward, Emma said. Her voice was steady, certain. We expose everything, hold the press conference. Let him try to bury it. Let him come after us. At least, we'll go down telling the truth. Jonathan looked at her. Really looked. Saw past the exhaustion and grief to the steel underneath. Your mother, the treatment he offered. My mother told me to finish what my father started. She chose justice over safety 14 years ago. I'm choosing it now. Emma's hands were shaking, but her voice stayed firm. Send the email. Call the press. Let's end this. Victoria nodded. Agreed. My father died trying to do the right thing. The least I can do is finish it. Jonathan's fingers hovered over the keyboard. One click, one email, and everything would change. They'd be committed. All in. No going back. Last chance, he said quietly. Once I send this, we're at war. Then let's go to war, Emma said. Jonathan pressed send. The email went out to 47 news outlets simultaneously. Subject line, Senator Redstone conspiracy, evidence of murder, fraud, corruption. Attached, 200 pages of documents, financial records, emails, photographs, everything. For 5 minutes, nothing happened. They sat in Jonathan's office, watching news websites, waiting for the explosion. Then Emma's phone rang. Boston Globe, then Jonathan's, New York Times, then Victoria's, CNN. Within 15 minutes, all 3 phones were ringing constantly. Reporters, news producers, everyone wanting confirmation, wanting interviews, wanting more. We hold the press conference at 8 a.m., Jonathan said, fielding calls. That gives them 3 hours to review the documents, to verify, to start building the story. And it gives Redstone 3 hours to mobilize his defenses, Victoria pointed out. Let him try. Emma felt strangely calm. The die was cast. Whatever happened now was out of her hands. He can't stop the truth. Not anymore. They spent the next 3 hours preparing, organizing documents, rehearsing statements, coordinating with reporters who were already camped outside the building. At 6:30 a.m. Emma's phone rang. Mass General, Dr. Chen. Emma's hand trembled as she answered. Yes? Emma? Your mother? You need to come now. The words Emma had been dreading. The end she'd known was coming, but still wasn't ready for. I can't. I'm in the middle of... Emma's voice broke. How long? Minutes. Maybe an hour. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Emma looked at Jonathan and Victoria, at the press conference materials spread across the table, at the thing she'd promised to finish. Jonathan was already standing. Go. We'll handle the press conference. No. Emma's voice was firm. No. My mother told me to finish this. That's what I'm doing. She'd understand. Emma. Victoria's voice was gentle. Achingly gentle. Your mother is dying. Go. Be with her. We can do this without you. But we'll tell your story. We'll make sure everyone knows what your father did, what your mother sacrificed. But you need to go. Now. Before it's too late. Emma stood frozen, torn between 2 impossible choices. Stay and finish what her father started. Go and be there when her mother took her last breath. Jonathan took her shoulders, looked into her eyes. Emma, go. Your mother needs you more than we do. And when this is over, when we've destroyed Redstone and gotten justice, you need to know you were there, that she didn't die alone. Emma's vision blurred with tears. She nodded, unable to speak, grabbed her keys and ran. She made it to Mass General in 12 minutes, took the stairs because the elevator was too slow, burst into the ICU, found her mother's room. Dr. Chen stood outside. "She's been asking for you." "In and out of consciousness, but she knows you're coming." Emma pushed through the door. Maggie's eyes were open, clear for the first time in days. The morphine had worn off enough for one last moment of lucidity, one last gift. "Emma," her voice was barely a whisper. "My brave girl, you came." Emma took her mother's hand, pressed it to her cheek. "I'm here, Mama. I'm here." "The press conference. You should be." "No. I should be here. With you. That's what matters." Maggie's smile was weak but genuine. Did you finish it?" Emma nodded, tears streaming freely now. "We're exposing everything. Redstone, the murders, all of it. Everyone's going to know the truth. About Dad, about what he did, what you did, all of it." "Good." Maggie's eyes drifted closed. "Good. Thomas would be so proud." "Mama, I'm sorry. Sorry I couldn't save you. Sorry for everything." "Shh. No, sorry. You gave me everything. The best daughter. The best life. I got to see you become—" Her breathing was labored now, each word a struggle. "Become exactly who your father knew you'd be." Emma clutched her mother's hand. "I love you, Mama. I love you so much." "Love you too, Emma Bear. Always. Forever." Maggie's eyes opened one last time, clear and bright and full of love. "Be happy, baby. Be free. Don't carry this. Let it go." I can't let you go." "You can. You will." Maggie's voice was fading. "Because that's what we do. We let go. We move forward. We—" The machine started to alarm. Long, steady tones that Emma knew meant ending. Medical staff rushed in, but Emma waved them away. This wasn't the time for heroics. This was the time for goodbye. She held her mother's hand as Maggie's breathing slowed, stuttered, stopped, held it as the monitors flatlined, held it as the doctor checked for a pulse and shook her head gently, held it as her mother, Margaret Harrison, 58 years old, who'd worked herself to death to give her daughter a better life, finally stopped fighting and found peace. Emma sat there, holding her mother's cooling hand, and felt something fundamental break inside her chest. Not her heart. That would have been merciful. No, this was deeper. The breaking of the last connection to her childhood, to her family, to the people who'd loved her unconditionally. She was alone now, truly, finally alone. A nurse touched her shoulder gently. "Miss Harrison, take all the time you need." But there was no time. There was a press conference, a reckoning, justice to be claimed. Emma kissed her mother's forehead one last time. "I love you, Mama. Thank you for everything." Then she stood, wiped her tears, walked out of that room and left her mother behind. In the hospital hallway, she pulled out her phone. 8:15 a.m. The press conference had started. She pulled up a news stream, saw Jonathan at a podium, Victoria beside him, cameras flashing. Evidence of systematic corruption spanning 20 years. Senator William Redstone orchestrated a scheme that resulted in multiple murders, infrastructure fraud, and the deaths of 12 innocent people. Emma watched her story being told, watched the truth she'd fought for finally seeing light, and felt nothing but emptiness where her mother used to be. She turned off the phone, sat down in the waiting room, and let herself finally, completely fall apart. Emma sat in that hospital waiting room for 3 hours, watching the world continue without her. Through the windows, Boston moved through its Monday morning. people rushing to work, living lives untouched by grief. The television in the corner played news coverage on mute, images of Jonathan and Victoria at the press conference cycling past like scenes from someone else's life. Her phone buzzed constantly. Jonathan, Victoria. Numbers she didn't recognize. Reporters probably wanting her statement, her story, her pain packaged into sound bites. She ignored them all. Let the phone vibrate itself to silence. A nurse brought her coffee she didn't drink. Forms to sign that she signed without reading. Condolences delivered in the practiced tones of someone who'd done this too many times. Emma nodded, said thank you, felt nothing. The hospital social worker appeared around noon, mid-50s, kind eyes, clipboard clutched like a shield. "Miss Harrison, I'm Carol. I'm so sorry for your loss. I need to discuss arrangements. I can't afford a funeral." Emma's voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. "I have $300 in my checking account. That's it." Carol sat down, close, but not invasive. "There are programs. Assistance for families without resources. We can help you navigate. My mother worked for this hospital for 20 years. Scrubbed your floors, managed your supplies, gave you everything." Emma's laugh was hollow. "And now she's dead and I can't even bury her properly. Miss Harrison, Emma, there's no shame in needing help. My mother would want justice, which is happening right now while I sit here filling out paperwork." Emma stood abruptly. "Give me whatever forms. I'll sign them. But I need to leave." Carol handed over a packet, explained about the medical examiner, the timeline for release of remains, the options for services. Emma heard maybe half of it. Signed where indicated. Took the papers and walked out. She made it to the parking garage before the panic attack hit. Suddenly couldn't breathe. The walls pressed in. Her vision tunneled. Heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. She collapsed against her car, sliding down to sit on oil-stained concrete, gasping for air that wouldn't come. This was it. The moment her body finally acknowledged what her mind had been holding at bay. Her mother was gone. Her father was gone. She was alone. Completely, irrevocably alone. Her phone rang. Jonathan for the 15th time. This time she answered. "Emma, thank God. Where are you? We've been trying to reach you for hours. The press conference." It worked. Every news outlet is running the story. Redstone's office is in chaos. They're denying everything, but the evidence is undeniable. The FBI has opened an investigation. The state attorney general is... Emma. "Emma, are you there? My mother died." The words came out flat, emotionless. "While you were at the press conference, she died." Silence. Then, "Oh, Emma, oh God, I'm so sorry. I'm coming to get you. Where are you?" "Mass General. Parking garage. Level 3. Emma stared at the concrete wall opposite her. Someone had spray-painted "Truth Wins" in red letters. The irony would have been funny if she could remember how to laugh. "John, I can't do this. I can't be the person who keeps fighting. I'm so tired." "I know. I know you are. Just stay there. I'm 10 minutes away. Stay there, okay?" Emma ended the call. Sat there breathing, in, out, counting the breaths because it was the only thing keeping her tethered to reality. A car door slammed, footsteps echoing through concrete. Then Jonathan was there, kneeling in front of her, still in his suit from the press conference, tie loosened and hair disheveled. "Emma." He didn't touch her. Just waited, letting her see him, letting her decide. She collapsed forward into his arms and finally, let herself break. The sobs came from somewhere deep and primal, ugly, gasping, the kind of crying that left you hollow and aching. Jonathan held her through all of it, didn't speak, didn't offer empty platitudes, just held her while she shattered against him. When the storm finally passed, Emma pulled back. Her face was swollen, eyes burning. "I need to see it. The coverage. What's happening?" Jonathan helped her up, guided her to his car. Once inside, he pulled out his tablet. "Emma, are you sure? You just lost your mother. You don't have to—" "Show me." He pulled up the news sites. The story was everywhere. Front page of every major outlet. Senator Redstone implicated in murder conspiracy. 20 years of corruption exposed. D3 tower collapse, not an accident. Video footage showed Jonathan and Victoria at the podium, documents displayed on screens behind them. Both of them, calm, controlled, presenting evidence with prosecutorial precision. Emma watched her father's story being told, watched the truth she'd fought for finally seeing light. "The FBI arrived at Redstone's office 2 hours ago," Jonathan said. "They're executing search warrants. His assets are being frozen. Early reports suggest he's preparing to resign from the Senate." He paused. "Emma, we did it. We actually did it. Your father's vindicated. The truth is out." Emma stared at the screen. Felt nothing. No triumph. No satisfaction. Just emptiness. "My mother died believing I was still in school," she said quietly. "She never knew I gave it all up. Never knew I was investigating her husband's murder. Never knew any of it. She died with lies between us. She knew you loved her. That's what mattered." "Is it?" Emma's laugh was bitter. "She spent 14 years in silence to protect me, and I spent the last weeks lying to her face. What kind of daughter does that make me? The kind who honors her parents by finishing what they started. The kind who fights for justice even when it costs everything." Jonathan's voice was firm. "Emma, your mother told you to do this. She gave you permission. She wanted me to be happy, to be free, to not carry this." Emma's voice broke. "And look at me. I'm drowning in it. My father's death. My mother's death. This crusade that's taken everything and given me nothing but more pain." Jonathan was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Do you regret it? Exposing Redstone?" Emma thought about her father, dead at 34. Her mother, who'd worked herself into an early grave. Jonathan's parents, killed trying to do the right thing. 12 innocent people crushed under tons of concrete and lies. "No," she said finally. "I don't regret it, but I'm not sure I survived it either." Jonathan drove her to his apartment, a penthouse in the Seaport district that Emma had never seen. Clean lines, minimalist furniture, windows overlooking the harbor. The kind of place that appeared in architecture magazines. Cold, beautiful, empty. "Guest room is through there," Jonathan said. "Bathroom's stocked. Take whatever you need. Sleep, eat, whatever helps." Emma stood in the middle of his living room, feeling displaced, a stranger in someone else's pristine life. "I should go home. I have work tomorrow, and I need to. There are arrangements to make for my mother. The funeral. I need to—" "Emma, stop!" Jonathan took her shoulders, gentle but firm. "You don't have work tomorrow. I'm giving you bereavement leave, as much time as you need. And the funeral, I'll handle it. The costs, the arrangements, everything. Your mother will have a proper service, I promise. I can't let you pay for my mother's funeral. Your mother gave us the evidence that brought down a senator. She gave us justice for our parents. Let me do this, please." His eyes held hers. "Besides, you're not exactly in a position to argue. You look like you haven't slept in days, you haven't eaten. You're barely holding yourself together. So you're going to sleep here tonight, and tomorrow we'll figure out next steps, okay?" Emma wanted to argue, wanted to maintain some semblance of independence, of control. But she was so tired. Tired of fighting, tired of being strong, tired of surviving on will alone. "Okay," she whispered. She showered, first time in 2 days, and found clothes laid out on the guest bed. Sweats and a t-shirt, soft and clean, probably Jonathan's. She put them on, drowning in fabric that smelled like expensive detergent and something else, something warm and safe. When she emerged, Jonathan had food waiting. Chinese takeout spread across his dining table. "You need to eat something." Emma sat, picked up chopsticks, stared at the food. Her stomach churned at the thought of eating, but she forced down a few bites because Jonathan was watching with concern that made her chest ache. "The press wants to interview you," he said quietly. "They want your story, the daughter who exposed her father's killer. But I told them no, not yet, not until you're ready." "I don't know if I'll ever be ready." Emma set down the chopsticks. "What's the point? Redstone will be tried, probably convicted. Justice will be served, but my parents are still dead. Nothing changes that." "No, nothing changes that." Jonathan's voice was gentle. "But Emma, what you did, what we did, it matters. 8 other building failures, dozens of other victims. Because of you, they'll get justice too. Their families will know the truth." "That matters." Emma's phone buzzed. She glanced at it. Victoria. "Emma, I'm so sorry about your mother. If you need anything, anything at all, please call me. You're not alone in this. V, not alone." The words felt like a lie. She was alone. More alone than she'd ever been. But she texted back anyway. "Thank you." The news played on Jonathan's television, muted but visible. Coverage had shifted from the press conference to reactions. Politicians denouncing Redstone, victims' families speaking out, the FBI confirming a criminal investigation. It was working. The machine of justice grinding forward. "What happens now?" Emma asked. "Legally? What happens to Redstone?" "Federal charges? Murder conspiracy? Fraud? Corruption? Obstruction of justice? He's looking at life in prison, multiple life sentences probably." Jonathan leaned back in his chair. "But that's not what you're really asking, is it?" Emma met his eyes. "What am I asking? Whether it's enough? Whether destroying him makes up for what we lost?" Jonathan's smile was sad. "It doesn't. Justice doesn't bring them back, doesn't heal the wounds, doesn't make us whole again. Then what's the point? The point is that evil doesn't win, that people like your father and my parents, people who fought for what's right, they don't die for nothing. Their deaths mean something, change something, make the world slightly less corrupt, slightly more just." He paused. "That's not enough. It's never enough. But it's something." Emma absorbed this, turned it over in her mind. "My mother told me to let it go, to not carry this. But I don't know how. How do you let go of something that's become your entire identity? You don't. Not all at once. But you learn to carry it differently, to make room for other things alongside it. Grief and joy, loss and hope, memory and new experiences." Jonathan's eyes were distant, looking at something Emma couldn't see. "It's been 20 years since I lost my parents, and I still carry them every day. But I've learned to carry other things too. The company I built, the people I've helped. And now," he looked at her, "now you." Emma's breath caught. "John, I'm not saying this to pressure you or to, I know the timing is terrible. Your mother just died and you're grieving, and this is probably the last thing you need to hear. But Emma, somewhere in the middle of this investigation, this crusade, I fell in love with your courage and your determination and the way you fight for people you love. And I need you to know that even if you can't, even if you don't, stop. Emma's voice was barely a whisper. Just stop. Jonathan stopped, waited. Emma's mind raced. Love. The word felt foreign, impossible. How could there be room for love when grief filled every corner of her being? How could she think about feeling anything when her mother had been dead for less than 12 hours? But sitting there in Jonathan's pristine apartment, wearing his clothes, eating food he'd bought, accepting comfort he'd offered, she realized something. She'd been falling too, slowly, imperceptibly, like snow accumulating overnight. Falling for this man who'd lost everything and built something new, who'd spent 20 years seeking justice and never lost his humanity in the process, who'd looked at a desperate girl in a soaked blazer and seen someone worth believing in. I can't, she said finally. Not now. Not like this. My mother just died and I can't process this on top of everything else. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Jonathan's voice was steady. I'm not asking for anything. Just wanted you to know you're not alone. That whatever comes next, grief, healing, justice, all of it, you don't have to face it by yourself. Emma nodded, unable to speak past the knot in her throat. She slept in Jonathan's guest room that night, or tried to. Kept seeing her mother's face, hearing the flat line of monitors, feeling the moment when Maggie's hand went from warm to cold. Emma stared at the ceiling and watched dawn creep across Boston, painting everything in shades of gray. Her phone buzzed at 7 a.m. Unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. Miss Harrison, this is Agent Sarah Chen with the FBI. I'm leading the investigation into Senator Redstone. I know this is difficult timing given your recent loss, but we need your testimony. The evidence you provided is compelling, but we need corroboration. Would you be willing to meet? Emma closed her eyes, felt the weight of it settling back onto her shoulders. The investigation wasn't over. The fight wasn't finished. There would be testimonies and trials and years of reliving trauma packaged into legal proceedings. Yes, she said, I'll meet you. Because that's what survivors did. They survived. They kept going. They bore witness. Even when every cell in their body screamed for rest. After the call, Emma lay there staring at nothing, felt hollowed out, scraped clean, a vessel emptied of everything that had made her human. A knock on the door. Jonathan, tentative. Emma, can I come in? Yeah. He entered carrying coffee, sat on the edge of the bed, maintaining careful distance. FBI called me too. They want both of us to testify. Victoria as well. It's going to be a long process. I know. Emma, you don't have to do this. You've already given more than anyone should have to. If you want to step back, let Victoria and me handle the testimony. No. Emma sat up. I started this. I'm finishing it. My father deserves that. My mother deserves that. She took the coffee, let the warmth seep into her hands. Besides, what else do I have? No parents, no school, no life beyond this crusade. Might as well see it through. Jonathan's expression was pained. That's not true. You have a life. A future. You're 22 years old, Emma. You have so much ahead of you. Do I? Emma's laugh was hollow. My father died when I was 8. My mother spent 14 years working herself to death. I spent my entire childhood watching them sacrifice everything. Then I sacrificed my education, my youth, everything I had to take care of my mother and expose my father's killer. What's left? What life is there beyond this? Whatever life you build, whatever you choose. Emma set down the coffee. I don't know how to choose anything that isn't survival or vengeance. I don't know how to want things, normal things, happiness, love, a future. She looked at him. You said you fell in love with me. But John, there's nothing to love. I'm just grief and rage held together by spite. When this is over, when Redstone's in prison and justice is served, what's left? Who am I without this? Jonathan was quiet for a long moment. Then he moved closer, sat beside her on the bed. You're Emma Harrison, Thomas Harrison's daughter, Maggie Harrison's daughter. You're brilliant and brave and stronger than anyone I've ever met. And yes, right now you're broken, grieving, barely holding on. But that's not all you are, and it's not all you'll be. Emma wanted to believe him, wanted to imagine a future where she was more than loss and pain. But sitting there in the gray morning light, her mother dead and her life in ruins, belief felt impossible. What if it's not enough? She whispered. What if I destroy Redstone and get justice and save the world, and it's still not enough? What if I'm still empty, still broken? Still, then we figure it out, together. One day at a time. Jonathan's hand found hers, squeezed. Emma, you don't have to have all the answers right now. You don't have to know who you are or what comes next. You just have to keep breathing, keep surviving. The rest, we'll figure out the rest. Emma looked at their joined hands, felt the warmth of him, the solidity, an anchor in a world that had come completely unmoored. Okay, she said softly. Okay. They sat there as dawn broke fully over Boston. Two people bound by loss and justice and something else, something fragile and new and maybe, possibly, strong enough to build on. Maybe, if they could just survive what came next. 3 months passed like water through cupped hands, present one moment, gone the next, leaving only dampness behind. Senator William Redstone was arrested on federal charges, his assets frozen, his empire crumbling. The trial was set for January, and the prosecution's case was ironclad. 20 years of corruption laid bare for the world to see. Thomas Harrison vindicated. Robert and Catherine Mitchell honored. 12 families finally receiving acknowledgement that their loved ones hadn't died by accident, but by greed. Justice was happening. Slowly, bureaucratically, but happening. Emma should have felt triumphant, victorious. Instead, she felt hollow. She'd buried her mother on a gray October day, rain falling like the sky was grieving too. Jonathan had kept his promise, arranged everything, paid for everything. The service was small, just Emma, Jonathan, Victoria, and a handful of her mother's co-workers from Mass General. People who'd known Maggie as the woman who always smiled despite exhaustion, who never complained despite pain, who'd loved her daughter with a ferocity that had sustained them both through impossible years. Emma had stood at the graveside beside her father's headstone. Finally, after 14 years, they were together again, and felt nothing. No tears, no catharsis, just emptiness where her heart used to be. The FBI interviews had been grueling, hours of testimony, reliving every detail. Agent Chen was kind but thorough, extracting information like a surgeon removing shrapnel, necessary but painful. Emma answered every question with mechanical precision. Yes, her father had documented the fraud. Yes, her mother had been threatened into silence. Yes, she had evidence proving Senator Redstone ordered multiple murders spanning 20 years. The media wanted her story too. the grieving daughter who'd exposed her father's killer. They painted her as a hero, a crusader, someone brave and strong and inspirational. Emma avoided interviews. Let Jonathan and Victoria be the public faces of the case. She couldn't bear to package her trauma into sound bites, to perform grief for strangers who'd forget her pain the moment they changed channels. Mitchell Innovations gave her paid leave. As much time as she needed, Jonathan said. Take 6 months, a year, whatever it took to heal. But Emma didn't know how to heal. Didn't know what healing even looked like when you'd been broken for so long you'd forgotten the shape of wholeness. She returned to work after 2 weeks. Not because she was ready, but because the empty apartment her mother had died to afford was suffocating. Every corner held memories. The kitchen where Maggie had cooked dinners stretched from too little. The living room where they'd watched old movies on weekend nights. The bathroom where Emma had helped her mother through chemotherapy sickness, holding back hair and pretending everything would be okay. She couldn't breathe there, couldn't sleep there, couldn't exist there without drowning in absence. So she worked, threw herself into projects with obsessive focus, arrived at 6 a.m., left at midnight, worked weekends, worked holidays, anything to avoid the silence waiting at home. Jonathan watched with growing concern but didn't intervene. Just made sure she ate, made sure she slept occasionally, made sure she didn't completely self-destruct. Victoria checked in daily. Texts, calls, sometimes just showing up with coffee and sitting in Emma's office without speaking. A silent companionship born of shared grief. They'd become unlikely friends, she and Victoria. 2 women who'd hated each other, united by dead fathers and determination to make their deaths mean something. Victoria had left Mitchell Innovations, was now working with victims' families, helping them navigate the legal system, providing resources and support. She'd found purpose in service, in making sure no one else felt as alone as she had. You should do the same, Victoria told Emma one evening. They were in Emma's office, 10th floor, overlooking Boston as it glittered in December darkness. Find something beyond this, beyond the investigation and the trial and the endless reliving of trauma. Like what? Emma's voice was flat. I don't know how to do anything else. Then learn. Go back to school, finish your degree, or travel, or, I don't know, Emma, anything, just something that's yours. Something that isn't defined by what you lost. Emma stared at her computer screen, at spreadsheets that had stopped making sense hours ago. What if there is no me beyond what I lost? What if grief is all I am? Victoria was quiet for a moment. Then, my therapist says grief is love with nowhere to go. That it's not about getting over it or moving past it. It's about learning to carry it differently, to make room for other things alongside it. You're in therapy? 3 times a week. PTSD, apparently, from the years of hiding, of living with fear and shame, from watching my father die and not knowing if it was suicide or murder, from 20 years of survival that wasn't really living. Victoria's smile was sad. You should try it. Therapy. Might help. Emma shook her head. I can't talk to a stranger about this. Can't put it into words for someone who doesn't understand. Then talk to me or Jonathan or anyone. Just don't keep it all inside. That's what I did. Look where it got me. Emma turned back to her work. Conversation over. Victoria sighed, but didn't push. Just squeezed Emma's shoulder and left. Alone again, Emma stared at the spreadsheets until the numbers blurred. Her phone buzzed. Jonathan, still working? It's 11 p.m. Come up to my office. I have something for you. Emma considered ignoring it, but curiosity, or maybe just the need for distraction, pulled her from her desk. She took the elevator to the 15th floor, found Jonathan's office dark except for the glow of the city outside. He stood at the windows, silhouetted against Boston's lights, turned when he heard her enter. You're killing yourself, he said without preamble. working yourself to death just like your mother did. Emma, you have to stop. I'm fine. You're not fine. You're barely functioning. You don't eat unless someone forces you. You don't sleep more than 3 hours a night. Emma, you look like you're disappearing. Emma wrapped her arms around herself. What do you want me to do? Fall apart? Break down? I can't afford to break down. The trial is in 3 weeks. They need my testimony. I have to be strong. You've been strong for 22 years. Maybe it's time to let yourself be weak. Jonathan moved closer. Emma, your mother's last words to you were to let it go, to not carry this. Are you honoring her memory by destroying yourself? Emma's eyes burned. I don't know how to let it go. Don't know how to be anything except this. The girl who lost her father. The girl who watched her mother die. The girl who exposed a senator. That's all I am. Take away the grief and the fight and what's left? Nothing. Just nothing. That's not true. Jonathan was in front of her now, close enough that she could see her reflection in his eyes. You're brilliant, talented. You taught yourself accounting from library books. You built complex financial models that my entire team couldn't create. You have a mind that, Emma, you could do anything. Be anything. You just have to let yourself try. What if I try and fail? What if I build something new and it falls apart? What if, her voice cracked. What if I'm happy and then lose it? I can't survive losing anything else. So you'll just not live, not try, not let yourself feel anything? Jonathan's voice was gentle but firm. Emma, that's not surviving. That's dying slowly, and I refuse to watch you do it. Emma's defenses crumbled. The tears she'd been holding back for 3 months finally broke free. She collapsed forward and Jonathan caught her, held her while she sobbed against his chest. All the grief, all the pain, all the exhaustion and fear and rage, everything she'd been containing, compressed into a single outpouring of raw emotion. I miss them, she gasped between sobs. I miss my dad and my mom, and I miss who I was before all of this. I miss believing the world was good. I miss feeling safe. I know. Jonathan's arms tightened around her. But Emma, you're not alone. You have me. You have Victoria. You have people who care about you, who want to help you heal. I don't know how to heal. Don't know how to be whole again. Then we'll figure it out. Together. One day at a time. One moment at a time. He pulled back enough to look at her. Emma, I love you. I'm in love with you. Not because you're broken, or because we share trauma, or because of this crusade. I love you because beneath all the grief and pain there's someone extraordinary, someone worth fighting for, someone worth... Emma kissed him. It wasn't romantic. Wasn't gentle or sweet or any of the things first kisses were supposed to be. It was desperate. A drowning person grabbing for air. A way to feel something, anything, other than the endless numbness. Jonathan kissed her back. Careful. Tender. Like she was something precious that might shatter. When they broke apart, Emma was shaking. I don't know if I can love you back. Don't know if I have anything left to give. I'm not asking you to love me back, not now. Maybe not ever. I'm just asking you to let me be here. Let me help. Let me... He cupped her face in his hands. Let me show you that life is still worth living. That there's more than grief, more than pain. That you deserve happiness even after everything you've lost. Emma wanted to believe him. Wanted to think that happiness was possible, that healing was achievable, that she could be more than the sum of her trauma. But belief felt impossible. Still, standing there in Jonathan's arms, Boston glittering below them like stars fallen to earth, Emma felt something flicker in her chest, Small, fragile, barely there. Hope, maybe. Or just the memory of what hope used to feel like. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, I'll try." It was the smallest commitment, the barest acknowledgement that maybe, possibly, there could be something beyond survival. But it was a start. The trial began 3 weeks later on a bitter January morning. Federal courthouse downtown, security tight, media everywhere. Emma walked up those steps flanked by Jonathan and Victoria, cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions. She kept her eyes forward, refused to perform for them. Inside, the machinery of justice ground forward. Opening statements, witness testimonies, evidence presented with clinical precision. Emma watched Senator William Redstone sit at the defense table, silver-haired and distinguished, looking like someone's grandfather rather than a murderer. He met her eyes once across the courtroom. No remorse, no shame, just calculation, assessing whether she was still a threat. Emma held his gaze until he looked away. Her testimony came on day 4. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Amanda Chen, walked Emma through everything, finding her mother's resume, the desperate interview, Jonathan's revelation about their connected tragedies, the investigation, the evidence, her father's documentation of 20 years of systematic corruption. "Miss Harrison," Amanda said gently, "can you tell the jury about the last conversation you had with your mother?" Emma's hands clenched in her lap. The courtroom was silent, waiting. She could feel Redstone's eyes on her, Jonathan's too, from where he sat in the gallery. Victoria beside him, offering silent support. "She told me the truth," Emma said, voice steady, despite the storm inside. "That my father wasn't negligent, that he'd discovered fraud, that he was murdered to silence him, that she'd been threatened. Told if she ever spoke out, they'd kill me too. So she stayed silent for 14 years. Carried that knowledge alone. Let my father's name be destroyed, let people think he was careless because protecting me mattered more than clearing his name. And how did that make you feel?" "Guilty." The word came out harsh. Guilty that she'd suffered alone. Guilty that I hadn't known. Guilty that the last weeks of her life were spent lying to each other. Her pretending I was still in school, me pretending everything was fine, when really I was investigating the conspiracy that killed my father. Your mother passed away during this investigation. Can you tell the jury about that?" Emma closed her eyes, saw her mother's face, heard the monitors flatlining, felt the moment when everything ended. "She died while we were holding a press conference to expose Senator Redstone. She died knowing I was fighting for justice. Her last words to me were—" Emma's voice broke. She steadied it. "Her last words were to be happy, to be free, to not carry this burden. And yet you're here, testifying, carrying that burden anyway. Why?" Emma opened her eyes, looked directly at the jury. 12 people who would decide whether 20 years of corruption and murder would finally face consequences. "Because my mother was wrong about one thing. This isn't a burden, it's a responsibility. My father tried to stop this. My mother kept me safe so I could finish it. Jonathan's parents died trying to expose the truth. 12 innocent people were murdered to hide it. I'm here because I owe it to them. All of them. To make sure their deaths meant something. To make sure this never happens again." The courtroom was silent. Even Redstone's lawyer, prepared to object to everything, said nothing. "No further questions," Amanda said quietly. The defense tried to rattle her, questioned her credibility, pointed out her lack of formal education, her financial desperation, suggested she'd fabricated evidence for money or revenge or both. Emma answered every question with calm precision, let the evidence speak for itself. When she finally stepped down, Jonathan was waiting outside the courtroom, pulled her into his arms without words. "You were incredible," he whispered against her hair. Emma sagged against him, exhausted. Is it over? The testimony part. But the trial will take weeks, maybe months. I don't know if I can do months of this. Then we'll take it one day at a time, one moment at a time. Jonathan pulled back to look at her. Emma, you did it. You told the truth. The rest is up to them. They walked out of the courthouse together into weak winter sunlight. Victoria was waiting, offered a small smile. Lunch, my treat. You both look like you need real food and terrible coffee. They went to a diner in the North End, old Boston, the kind of place that hadn't changed in 50 years. Ordered comfort food they barely tasted. Sat in a booth and breathed, just breathed, letting the tension slowly ease. What happens if he's acquitted? Emma asked suddenly. If the jury doesn't believe us? If he walks free? Victoria and Jonathan exchanged glances. Then Victoria spoke. He won't walk free. Even if, and that's a big if, even if he's acquitted on the murder charges, he's facing fraud, corruption, obstruction charges. The financial evidence alone is damning. He's going to prison, Emma, one way or another. But is it enough? Is it justice if he's convicted of fraud but not murder? If my father's death doesn't— Your father's death already means something, Jonathan interrupted. Because of him? Because of what he documented, Redstone's crimes are exposed. 8 other building failures are being reinvestigated. Dozens of other victims are getting answers. The system that allowed this is being reformed. That's your father's legacy. That's what his courage bought. Emma wanted to believe it was enough, wanted to think that justice, served even imperfectly, would bring peace. But sitting in that diner, surrounded by the mundane sounds of other people's normal lives, she still felt empty. I need to do something, she said suddenly. Something beyond the trial, beyond the investigation. Victoria, you're helping victims' families. Jonathan, you're reforming building codes, improving oversight. What am I doing? Just existing, surviving. That's not enough. What do you want to do? Victoria asked gently. Emma thought about her father, about his courage to speak truth regardless of cost, about her mother's sacrifice, about her own truncated education and the dreams she'd set aside. I want to finish my degree, she said slowly, the idea forming as she spoke. Go back to BU, complete what I started. Then maybe work in forensic accounting, help expose financial crimes, use everything I learned investigating Redstone to help other people, to make sure other families don't lose what we lost. Jonathan's smile was genuine, reaching his eyes for the first time in weeks. That's perfect. That's Emma. That's exactly what you should do. But the cost, the time, I'd have to cut back at work, and I still have my mother's medical bills, and— The medical bills are paid, Jonathan said. I took care of them. And as for work, keep your position. Work part-time while you finish school. We'll make it work. John, I can't let you keep paying for everything. I can't be your charity case. You're not charity. He stopped himself, took a breath. Emma, let me do this, please. I have more money than I'll ever need. Let me use it for something that matters, for someone who matters. Emma looked between them, Jonathan with his earnest determination, Victoria with her quiet support. 2 people who'd been strangers 3 months ago, now the closest thing to family she had left. Okay, she said finally. Okay, I'll do it. I'll finish school. It was a small decision, one step toward a future that still felt impossibly distant, but it was movement, forward motion. The first choice she'd made in years that wasn't about survival or vengeance, but about building something new. The trial dragged on for 6 weeks. Witness after witness, evidence piled upon evidence. The prosecution built their case with meticulous care, financial records showing systematic fraud, emails proving Redstone's direct involvement, phone recordings of him ordering hits, testimony from construction workers who'd been threatened into silence. The defense tried everything. Claimed the evidence was fabricated, suggested a vast conspiracy against their client, argued that Redstone was being scapegoated for systemic industry problems. But the evidence was overwhelming, undeniable. Emma attended every day, sat in that courtroom and watched justice slowly, painfully unfold. Jonathan beside her, Victoria on her other side. A united front of people who'd lost everything to one man's greed. The jury deliberated for 3 days. Emma spent those days in Jonathan's apartment, unable to work, unable to think, unable to do anything except wait. She'd enrolled at BU for spring semester, would start classes in 2 weeks. Should have been preparing, reading syllabi, getting organized. Instead, she stared at walls and counted hours. On the 3rd day, her phone rang. Amanda Chen. The jury's back. Verdict in 1 hour. Emma's hands shook so badly she almost dropped the phone. Jonathan drove them to the courthouse, Victoria meeting them there. They walked in together, 3 people bound by grief and determination and the desperate hope that suffering would finally mean something. The courtroom filled, media, victims' families, spectators drawn by the spectacle of powerful man's fall. Emma took her seat and felt the weight of every person her father had tried to save, every family destroyed, every life ruined. The jury filed in. Emma searched their faces for clues, but found nothing. Just tired people who'd spent weeks absorbing horrors. "Has the jury reached a verdict?" the judge asked. "We have, Your Honor. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder in the death of Thomas Harrison, how do you find?" Emma's heart stopped. The courtroom held its breath. "Guilty." The word detonated like a bomb. The courtroom erupted. Gasps, sobs, scattered applause quickly silenced by the judge's gavel. Emma sat frozen, unable to process. Guilty, her father's murder acknowledged, validated, avenged. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder in the deaths of Robert and Catherine Mitchell, how do you find? Guilty. Jonathan's hand found Emma's, squeezed. She squeezed back. The verdict continued. Guilty on all charges, every murder, every instance of fraud, every count of corruption and obstruction. Guilty, guilty, guilty. The word repeated until it lost meaning, became just sound, became the closing of a 20-year wound that would never fully heal, but might, finally, scar over. When it was done, when the judge had thanked the jury and set sentencing for 2 weeks hence, Emma stood on unsteady legs. Jonathan supported her on one side, Victoria on the other. They walked out of that courthouse together while cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions and the world celebrated justice served. Emma felt nothing. Or maybe she felt everything, so much that it canceled out, left her empty and ringing like a bell struck too hard. They went back to Jonathan's apartment, sat in his living room while Boston glittered outside, indifferent to individual triumphs. "We did it," Victoria whispered. "We actually did it." "Yeah," Jonathan said. "We did." Emma sat silent, waiting to feel something. Triumph, relief, satisfaction, anything. "Emma?" Jonathan's voice was concerned. "Are you okay?" "I don't know," she said honestly. When this moment came, I thought I'd feel different, fixed, whole, but I just feel empty." Victoria moved closer, took Emma's hand. "Grief doesn't have an end point. Justice doesn't erase loss. Your father is still gone. Your mother is still gone. Redstone's conviction doesn't change that." "Then what was the point?" Emma's voice broke. "What was all of it for, if I still feel like this?" Because other people won't have to, Jonathan said quietly. Because the system is changing. Because families who lost loved ones in other building failures are getting answers. Because your father's death wasn't in vain. He paused. Emma, healing isn't instant. Winning doesn't mean you're suddenly okay. It means you can start. Really start. Building something new. Emma thought about that. About the degree she'd start pursuing. About the career helping other victims. About Jonathan's quiet love and Victoria's steady friendship. About the possibility, distant but real, of a life beyond grief. Okay, she whispered. Okay, I'll try. It was the same thing she'd said 3 months ago. The same small commitment. But this time she almost believed it. Almost. Sentencing came 2 weeks later. Federal guidelines suggested 20 to life. The prosecution argued for multiple consecutive life sentences. The defense pleaded for mercy, for consideration of Redstone's age and health and decades of public service. The judge was a woman in her 60s, Judge Patricia Brennan, appointed 15 years ago, known for fairness and firmness. She looked at Redstone with something between contempt and sorrow. Senator Redstone, you have been convicted of crimes spanning 20 years. Multiple murders, systematic fraud, corruption that endangered countless lives. You used your position of public trust to enrich yourself while people died. You silenced those who would expose you. You destroyed families. You corrupted the very institutions meant to protect us. She paused. Let the words settle. You have shown no remorse, no acknowledgement of wrongdoing. Even now, you maintain your innocence despite overwhelming evidence. You have taken no responsibility for the lives you destroyed. Emma watched Redstone's face. Still no emotion, no humanity, just the cold calculation of a predator caught but not cowed. I hereby sentence you to life in prison without possibility of parole on each count of murder to be served consecutively. Additionally, 50 years on fraud charges, 20 years on corruption charges. Total effective sentence, multiple life terms. The gavel fell. Final, irrevocable. Redstone would die in prison, would never again see freedom, never again harm innocent people, never again profit from others' suffering. Emma waited to feel satisfaction, victory, triumph. She felt only tired. They left the courthouse for the last time. The media circus had died down, not gone, never fully gone, but manageable. A few reporters shouted questions. Emma ignored them. She'd given enough, said enough. The rest was silence. What now? Victoria asked when they were safely in Jonathan's car. What do we do now? Now, Jonathan looked at Emma. Now we live, we heal, we move forward. Emma stared out the window at Boston passing by, her city, her home. The place where she'd lost everything and somehow, impossibly, found the strength to keep going. I start school next week, she said. Introduction to Forensic Accounting, Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 9 a.m. I'll drive you, Jonathan offered. You don't have to. I want to. Let me do this. Let me be part of your new beginning. Emma looked at him. Really looked. Saw past the CEO, the investigator, the man who'd lost his parents too young. Saw someone who'd chosen to love her despite her broken edges, who'd stood beside her through the worst of it, who was offering even now to stay. Okay, she said. Okay. It was such a small word, such an inadequate response to everything he'd given her. But it was acceptance. Acknowledgement. The beginning of letting someone in. They drove through Boston as winter afternoon faded to evening, past Mass General where her mother had died, past the North End where they'd eaten terrible diner food and made plans, Past Mitchell Innovations, where this had all begun, with a desperate girl in a soaked blazer begging for a chance, so much had changed. So much would never change. Her parents were still gone. The grief was still there, would always be there, a permanent resident in her chest. But alongside it, new things were growing. Purpose, hope, the possibility of happiness. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was all anyone could ask for, to survive loss and build something new from the ruins, to honor the dead by living, really living. "John?" Emma said as they pulled up to his building. "Yeah? Thank you. For everything. For believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. For standing beside me. For loving me when I couldn't love myself." Jonathan's smile was soft, genuine. "Always, Emma. Always." They went upstairs together. Victoria joined them. She'd become a regular presence in their lives, family in the way chosen family always was. They ordered pizza, watched mindless television, existed together in comfortable silence. Around midnight, Victoria left. Emma and Jonathan stood at his windows, looking out at the city. "I think I'm going to be okay," Emma said quietly. "Not today. Maybe not for a long time. But eventually, I think I'm going to be okay." Jonathan's arm came around her shoulders. She leaned into him, let herself be held, let herself feel safe. "You're already more than okay," he said. "You're extraordinary. You always have been." Emma closed her eyes, felt the city's heart beat through the glass, felt Jonathan's steady presence beside her, felt for the first time in months something other than grief. It wasn't happiness, not yet, but it was close, a distant cousin, a promise of what might be possible if she could just keep going, keep trying, keep choosing life over mere survival. Her parents were gone. That truth would never change, would never stop hurting, but they'd wanted her to live, to be happy, to be free. Maybe it was time to try. Maybe it was time to honor their memory not with grief but with joy, not with vengeance but with living well, not with survival but with truly, finally, being alive. Emma opened her eyes, looked at Boston glittering below, saw the future spread out like stars, uncertain, yes, but full of possibility. "Okay," she whispered to the city, to her parents, to herself. "Okay, I'm ready." And for the first time in 22 years, she believed it. A message of hope and resilience. If you've lived 6 decades or more, you understand something profound, that love and loss are two sides of the same precious coin. Emma's story reminds us that our greatest trials can become our most meaningful legacies. Like Emma's father, Thomas, and mother, Maggie, you may have made sacrifices that seemed invisible, working extra shifts, postponing dreams, putting others first. But those sacrifices ripple forward. They matter. They create strength in those who come after us. Emma's journey shows us that it's never too late to seek truth, to demand justice, or to begin again. Whether you're facing the loss of loved ones, grappling with injustice, or simply feeling that life has taken more than it's given, remember, your story isn't over. Every morning you wake up is another chance to honor those you've lost by living fully, loving deeply, and refusing to let grief have the final word. The courage to keep going, to transform pain into purpose. That's the inheritance we leave behind. That's what makes a life extraordinary. What moment in your own life required the kind of courage Emma showed? Have you ever had to choose between staying silent to protect someone you love or speaking truth that might put them at risk? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today.